What if the very virtue you've been praised for is the one quietly dismantling your power? They told you to stay humble, to speak less of your victories, to walk with your eyes lowered, even when you've conquered more than the men beside you. They told you humility makes you noble, that modesty is strength, that downplaying your greatness is the mark of a true leader. They lied, because humility in the eyes of the powerful is not a virtue. It is camouflage for the weak. Showing off is not strength, but erasing yourself entirely. That's suicide. A man who refuses to own his presence becomes invisible to those who trade in perception, respect, and fear. Niccolò Machiavelli wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved when one must choose. But the humble man is neither feared nor loved. He is forgotten." Let us begin where history does not forgive softness. Cesar Borgia, ruthless, brilliant, destined for domination, did not whisper his moves. He orchestrated them with precision, then let the world tremble at their echo. He did not credit fate or luck or divine will. He stood at the center of the storm and called it strategy. Contrast him with the countless men who achieved quietly and were buried just as quietly. Humility may win applause from the masses, but the masses do not write legacy. The masses do not crown kings. In today's world, humility is marketed as maturity. You succeed and the first instinct you're taught is to apologize for it, to shrink it, to balance the scales by pretending it wasn't that hard, or that you got lucky, or that others helped more than they did. This is not virtue, this is a muzzle. You muzzle your power, you chain it in politeness, you water it down so others won't feel small, and slowly, without realizing, you turn your edge into a curve, a blade into a spoon. The modern trap is this: applause for self-erasure, likes for fake modesty, the humble caption, the quiet win, the refusal to name your price. And while you bend yourself into invisibility, another man, louder, colder, unafraid to be seen, steps into the space you surrendered. Understand this: humility is not silence. Silence is strategy. Humility is self-deletion. The man who speaks little but radiates presence is dangerous. The man who belittles himself to appear relatable is disposable. There is a tension here, because we've confused arrogance with assertion. We've labeled confidence as ego, and we've taught our most capable men that to be respected, they must appear uncertain. This is not wisdom, this is control. The truth is, most people are uncomfortable around certainty, around unapologetic excellence, around a man who does not flinch when he speaks of his own dominance. But comfort is not the goal. Respect is. Power is not given to those who wait politely. It is taken by those who walk into a room and declare, "I deserve to be here." There's a reason the wolf does not ask the sheep for permission. Let me give you a picture: a battlefield. Two generals. One stands tall, eyes like daggers, voice firm, plan calculated. He tells his men what they will do, and how, and why they will win. He does not smile. He does not thank fate. He does not hedge. The other general is kind, measured. He speaks of teamwork, of chance, of humility in victory. His men respect him, but they do not fear disobedience. When the battle begins, one army moves like a machine, the other waits for consensus. Now ask yourself, which general survives? You do not command men or respect by lowering your crown. At the midpoint of every empire, there is a moment where its leader must choose: do I soften myself to comfort others, or do I sharpen myself to protect what I've built? The humble man gives ground. The dominant man gives warning. Let us take it deeper. Humility teaches you to underestimate yourself so others won't feel insecure. But Machiavelli warns, men judge more by the eye than by the hand. In other words, perception is reality. If you act beneath your power, they will believe you are. Worse, they will treat you as such. And once they do, regaining position requires not just assertion, but retribution. This is why kings did not kneel unless they intended to execute. When you bow too often, they forget you were ever standing. You were not born to apologize for your talent, or downplay your instincts, or share the throne with men who did not bleed for it. And yet, many of you do. You win, then immediately explain why you didn't really deserve it. You speak, then backpedal to make others comfortable. You lead, then hesitate to call it leadership. Each time, you chip away at your own authority. Humility is not harmless, it is corrosive. It teaches the lion to act like a lamb, and soon, even the lamb forgets the lion ever had teeth. So ask yourself, who taught you that being small was safe? Who benefits from you hiding your light, your mind, your force? It was never for your growth, it was for their comfort. And you, king, you do not exist to be comfortable. You exist to conquer. They will tell you, stay grounded. But what they mean is, don't rise so high that I have to look up to speak to you. This is the quiet treason of humility. It masquerades as moral advice, but it's a leash. a leash offered by those who fear what you become without it. You must understand the psychology of power. Man is not drawn to weakness, he is drawn to what he cannot fully understand, cannot predict, cannot control. And humility, true, self-erasing humility, strips you of mystery. It makes you digestible, predictable, safe, but nothing feared is ever safe. The lion is not admired for his gentleness. The general is not followed for his self-doubt. The ruler is not remembered because he knew when to step back. No, they are remembered because they stepped forward when others trembled, because they stood tall, spoke clearly, and made no excuses for the weight of their crown. You don't need to shout to dominate a room, but you do need to take up space in it. And humility, the modern performative kind, trains you to shrink, to downplay your intelligence so you don't seem arrogant, to nod when you should correct, to smile when you should command. It teaches you to become forgettable and then asks you to be proud of being overlooked. But power is not won through absence, it is won through undeniable presence. Machiavelli warned us, a prince is also esteemed when he is a true friend and a true enemy. That is, when he is fully known for what he stands for and what he opposes. Humility clouds that signal. It confuses your allies and emboldens your enemies. Because the humble man is easy to test, easy to probe, easy to ignore. He speaks, and the room continues. He enters, and nothing stops. He acts, and it is forgotten. Contrast that with the man who moves like thunder, just before the strike, silent, but loaded with force. He does not need to be loud, he needs to be undeniable. This is the essence of real dominance, not loudness, but certainty. Not arrogance, but presence. Not apology, but unapologetic self-possession. You do not owe the world an apology for being sharper, faster, hungrier. You owe it a warning. I am not here to entertain your comfort. Here's the deeper danger. Once humility is baked into your identity, it becomes a form of self-sabotage. You start to doubt your instincts. You give away credit that belongs to you. You begin to fear recognition as if it's a sin. And worst of all, you train the people around you to believe you are replaceable, because the man who erases himself invites erasure. I want you to imagine something, a high-stakes negotiation, a table of executives. Everyone is speaking, pitching, pivoting, and one man, sharp suit, composed silence, sits back, he listens, he waits, he does not interrupt. But when he speaks, the table shifts. He does not waste words, he does not humble himself. He states terms, draws lines, names his worth, and then watches who flinches. This man is not arrogant, he is unshakable, and his presence, not his humility, is what seals the deal. You are not in this world to soften your brilliance so that others can feel bright. You are not here to tuck in your ambition so others don't call it ego. You are not here to be humble, you are here to become undeniable. So many men walk through life with a fire they've been taught to hide, and they wonder why no one respects them. But respect begins with refusal. Refusal to be muted, refusal to shrink, refusal to perform humility as a costume when your bones were built for command. Ask yourself, how many moments have you watered down your own power? How many victories have you dismissed so others wouldn't feel small? How many times have you let a lesser man speak over you just to keep the peace? That is not humility, that is quiet betrayal of your mind, your voice, your purpose. You think people will appreciate your softness, but the world only rewards what it fears or needs. And if you are neither feared nor needed, you are forgotten. So make them remember. Walk into rooms like your name is already on the walls. Speak like your silence costs something. Move like hesitation is treason. You are not here to beg for approval. You are here to claim your place, without bowing, without blinking, without reducing yourself into something palatable. There will be those who call you arrogant. Let them. There will be those who call you difficult. Let them. There will be those who say you've changed. And to that you say, yes, I stopped apologizing for who I was always meant to be. There comes a moment in every man's ascent when he realizes humility didn't protect him, it concealed him. You're not losing because you're incapable. You're losing because you're invisible. And the tragedy is that you were trained to believe invisibility was virtue. They told you to keep your head down, to let your work speak for itself, to wait your turn. But the truth is, history does not remember those who waited. It remembers those who moved while others were still asking for permission. Fortune is a woman, Machiavelli wrote, and if you wish to master her, it is necessary to conquer her by force. Force, not politeness, not modesty, not humble intentions. Because in the real world, outcomes don't go to the most deserving, they go to the most deliberate. Every system, every industry, every court, every kingdom is tilted toward those who do not hesitate to take up space. And humility, as it's been sold to you, is hesitation made holy. You can see this pattern everywhere. The humble artist whose brilliance gathers dust because he never promoted his work. The humble leader passed over again and again because he refused to name his ambition. The humble warrior who downplayed his victories until his enemies no longer saw him as a threat. And slowly, that man begins to vanish, not physically, but from the imagination of others, because he chose invisibility and called it grace. You must learn the difference between humility and restraint. Restraint is control, humility is erasure. A restrained man can dominate without noise. A humble man cannot dominate at all. The wolf that waits in silence is not humble, he is calculating. He has fangs, and he knows exactly when to show them. But you, if you keep hiding your fangs under the illusion of virtue, you will forget how to bite. And once that happens, you're no longer the wolf, you're the lamb wearing his skin. Let's reset the lens with a simple visual. Picture a throne room. Marble floors, cold air, advisors line the sides, whispering. And at the center, a man stands before the king. This man has served loyally for years. He's brilliant, quiet, humble. He's never asked for more, and yet he is overlooked. Why? Because he never made the king look twice. He never demanded the weight of his presence be acknowledged. Now a new man arrives, less experienced, but bolder. He speaks with certainty. He makes eye contact. He names his vision clearly, and the room shifts. The king sees him, because presence is not given, it is declared. This is what humility steals from you, your declaration, your ability to imprint yourself on the minds of those who can elevate or destroy you. Power, after all, is not just what you do, it's what people believe you can do. And if you constantly minimize yourself, they will start to believe you. They'll start to think your silence is consent, your modesty is doubt, your deference is weakness, and they will act accordingly. This is why humility is not just unwise, it is dangerous, because in every room, every alliance, every power structure, you are being measured, and when you refuse to state your value, others will assign it for you, and they will always undervalue what you do not price yourself. So if you speak, speak with gravity. If you move, move with certainty. If you win, own the win, because false humility doesn't make people love you more, it just makes them forget what you've done. They will gladly take your silence and call it permission. They will let you disappear behind your own manners. They will thank you for stepping back and then close the door before you step forward again. And when you finally realize what's happened, when you try to reclaim what you've given away, you'll find that power does not return to the man who abandoned it. It migrates, it reroutes, it finds new carriers, men who never apologized for wanting it. So ask yourself right now, are you being humble or are you being erased? Are you being noble or are you being neutralized? Are you leading or are you hiding behind the illusion of good behavior? The world does not change for men who ask nicely. It bends for those who take up the space they've earned, with composure, with strength, and without the need for permission slips dressed as humility. You were not born to be agreeable. You were not shaped by hardship to become gentle. You were not gifted with potential so that you could lower your eyes every time someone weaker than you feels insecure. No king ever built an empire by pretending to be smaller than he was. There is a reason the world does not reward the quiet genius, because genius unspoken is genius unseen. And in a world ruled by perception, the unseen man may as well not exist. This is the final cruelty of humility. It convinces brilliant men to bury themselves alive, in silence, in restraint, in false virtue. It turns excellence into a private secret. It makes greatness something you're not allowed to say out loud, and so you comply. You fold your strength into a whisper. You make your victories small, you cover your fire in fog, until the world forgets you were ever burning at all. But power never forgets noise. Power never forgets presence. Power bends for those who refuse to fold. Machiavelli said, "A wise prince should attract to himself capable men and give them honors." But what happens to the capable man who refuses those honors, who bows his head and says, "I'm just doing my part"? He disappears. He is replaced, not by someone more capable, but by someone louder, bolder, hungrier. This is how power operates. It is not a prize you wait to be handed. It is a battlefield. And humility, in that arena, is like stepping onto the field without armor. You may have the skill, you may have the mind, but if you lack the will to assert it, to show it, claim it, declare it, then you are simply training for a war you'll never fight. Let me speak directly to you now. You've been told that to be humble is to be good, that to want recognition is ego, that to step forward is arrogance. No, to be good is to live in truth. And the truth is, you are powerful, you are dangerous, you are capable of things they would never expect from a man like you. But if you bury that truth beneath politeness, you betray it. You trade your potential for their comfort. And what does the world offer in return? A pat on the back, a hollow compliment, a thank you for being invisible while others steal the light. Do not confuse praise for position. They will compliment your humility while promoting the man who made himself known. They will tell you, "We admire your modesty," as they hand the role, the power, the influence to someone less skilled but more willing to be seen. Because in the real world, recognition is not just about ego, it is about leverage. It is the currency of movement, and if you refuse to spend it, you remain stuck. This is where the shift must begin. You must kill the part of you that seeks approval for being small. You must murder the habit of shrinking. You must bury the voice that says, "Don't say too much, don't stand out, don't seem full of yourself." Because if you don't, they will bury you first. They'll bury your ambition, your dominance, your edge, and you will stand at your own funeral, wondering why the world never gave you what you never asked for. Here is what no one told you. When you speak with certainty, the world leans in. When you move with precision, the room adjusts. When you own your force, the weak either follow or flee, but they do not ignore you. That's the mark of presence. That's what humility can never give you. It can earn you kindness. It can earn you politeness. It can earn you empty applause from people who would never follow you into war. But it cannot earn you fear. It cannot earn you loyalty. It cannot earn you power. And in the game of rulers, strategy and real legacy, those are the only currencies that matter. Let me ask you something you've avoided. Why are you afraid of being seen? Why do you apologize before you speak? Why do you feel guilty for being sharper, faster, more focused than the ones around you? Who taught you to hide? Trace that voice, find the face, and you will see it was not a mentor, it was a limiter, someone who needed you small so they could feel safe. You are not here to keep others safe from your greatness. You are here to become something so unshakable, so precise, that the world either moves with you or gets out of your way. So let me leave you with this. Every time you choose humility over presence, someone else wins the prize you were born to take. Every time you stay silent to avoid seeming proud, someone else speaks your destiny into existence. Every time you downplay what you've done, you give permission for the world to forget it. And every time you kneel in the name of humility, you train yourself to serve. But you were never meant to serve. If you strip away the noise, the likes, the compliments, all that remains is consequence. And the consequence of humility is obscurity. In the court of power, you are either shaping the room or disappearing into its corners. There is no middle ground. They will not tell you this directly. That would be too honest. Instead, they smile and say, "Stay grounded," as if ambition is dangerous, as if boldness is arrogance, as if visibility is a flaw. But those same people, the ones who urge you to shrink, will turn and follow the man who never apologized for being seen. This is the paradox they never speak of. They say they admire humility, but they follow dominance. They say they respect modesty, but they reward command. They say don't brag, while promoting the one who never shut up about his value. And while you sit there hoping they'll notice your quiet efforts, another man walks in, speaks with conviction, and leaves with what should have been yours. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. And how do men honor a title? By embodying it without shame, by wearing it, not like a borrowed robe, but like armor molded to their form. You want to be a leader, then speak like you are already one. You want respect, then move like a man who does not need it. You want power, then show the world that you do not fear the weight of your own voice. Humility, as you've been taught it, is not the path to greatness. It is the trap just before it. And the longer you sit in it, the more familiar it feels, until one day it becomes who you are. The man who's always patient, the man who never asks, the man who stays polite even when he's being robbed of his credit, his time, his place. But what happens when patience runs out? When silence becomes suffocation? When humility begins to rot into bitterness? By then it's too late. The doors you didn't knock on are closed. The roles you didn't claim are filled. The respect you didn't demand is now permanently elsewhere. This is the cost. Not in theory, in your life, right now. Let's make it personal. How many times have you let someone less skilled than you speak louder? How many times have you let your ideas be watered down by committee? How many times have you smiled and said, "It's fine," when you knew damn well it wasn't, and you called it maturity, you called it patience, you called it humility. But what you were really doing was erasing yourself in real time, and they watched you do it. They watched you carry the load, do the work, swallow the credit, and smile like that made you strong. But it didn't make you strong. It made you replaceable. Because no one fears the man who always agrees. No one remembers the man who never raises his hand. No one follows the man who never stands up and says, "This is mine." You want to know why some men rise faster? It's not because they're better. It's because they decided to stop hiding. They speak first. They take credit. They name their value without flinching. Not because they're arrogant, but because they understand this. The world gives more to those who demand more. It's not fair. It's not polite. But it is true. And Machiavelli didn't write The Prince for men who wanted fairness. He wrote it for men who wanted results. So stop asking for fairness. Ask for leverage. Ask for clarity. Ask for the room, and then take it. There is no shame in saying, "I built this." There is no guilt in claiming, "I led that." There is no arrogance in standing up and declaring, "I matter, and I'm not afraid to be seen." Because if you don't say it, no one else will. And if you don't show it, they'll assume it's not there. You have a choice. You can be liked for being humble, or respected for being undeniable, but you cannot be both. Choose. A lion that hides his teeth is not safer. He is simply closer to slaughter. And a man who hides his greatness, thinking it will protect him, learns too late that humility is not a shield, it's a sheath, a covering for the blade that was meant to be drawn. You were taught to be silent, soft, modest, and told that this was strength. But the kind of strength that never strikes, never claims, never shines, is indistinguishable from weakness. And the world doesn't care what you meant to be, it responds to what you declare. Machiavelli warned us, again and again, the prince who waits too long to act loses not only opportunity, but the image of power. And image is everything. A man who walks like he's second place becomes it. A man who speaks like he's unsure confirms it. A man who constantly underplays his value ensures no one else will ever overestimate it. This is not a call to arrogance. This is a call to precision. There is a difference between being humble and being hesitant. There is a difference between respect and resignation. You think the world will reward your restraint. It won't. It will eat you alive and leave your name off the credits. Because the truth is, nobody cares how quietly you built the empire. They only care if they know it was you. And if they don't, someone else will rewrite the story with their name in your place. This is how legends are stolen. Not through force, but through your silence. So what do? You speak when it's uncomfortable. You claim what's yours without guilt. You let the room adjust to your presence, not the other way around. Because power isn't granted to the polite. It gravitates toward the man who doesn't flinch when it arrives. You think humility will earn you peace, but peace is not given to the quiet man, it's given to the man no one wants to fight. And that kind of peace only comes from one thing: presence. The kind of presence that can't be ignored, the kind that fills the room before you even speak, the kind that speaks and no one dares to interrupt. You know what that presence is built on? Conviction. Conviction that your voice matters, that your strength is not a danger, but a compass, that your ambition is not a flaw, but a force, that your victories do not require apology, only direction. Humility will tell you to wait for validation, but legacy doesn't wait. It's carved, claimed, and commanded, and only those who step forward, loud, clear, steady, ever hold the pen. You are not meant to be quiet. You are not meant to be agreeable. You are not meant to be remembered fondly and forgotten easily. You are meant to leave a mark, one that cannot be erased by silence, by comfort, or by the fragile egos of smaller men. So the next time someone tells you to be humble, ask yourself, are they trying to protect you, or are they trying to keep you from rising higher than them? Because a king who kneels too long forgets the weight of his own crown, and when he forgets, someone else picks it up. So stand, speak, and stop hiding, because the world will never make room for a man too humble to walk through the door. If you've made it this far, it means something inside you has already awakened. A part of you has begun to see through the illusion that being small is noble, that hiding your light is maturity, that waiting your turn will somehow build an empire. It won't, and you know it because you felt the weight of being overlooked, the sting of silence after you delivered, the ache of watching lesser men win louder simply because they refused to kneel. But that ends now, because real self-respect doesn't whisper, it moves like thunder. Being loved means nothing if you must abandon your power to receive it. Being liked means nothing if it costs you the truth of who you are, and true self-command begins the moment you stop apologizing and start walking like your name belongs in rooms they tried to lock. So now I ask you, are you ready to be misjudged, misunderstood, feared, or even hated, all in the name of something deeper, your presence, your clarity, your rise? If this message struck you, if it mirrored something you've always known but couldn't name, then write it in the comments. I will not shrink. Let the world see how many men are done being silent. And don't stop here. Watch the next video, because this shift you're feeling, it's just the beginning. See you there. Fear is the most honest teacher you will ever know. It does not flatter you. It does not pretend to be your friend. It does not disguise its intent with warm smiles or soft voices. Fear confronts you with your own reflection, unfiltered, unarmed, and unprepared. And this is why the man who is unafraid is not brave, but blind. The brave man is the one who looks fear in the face and learns from it. For fear strips away illusions. It shows you what you truly care about, what you truly depend on, and what you are willing to protect at all costs. When a man is afraid, he reveals his priorities more clearly than in any speech. If you wish to know another's soul, watch what they guard when they panic. The coward clings to comfort. The weak run to false security. But the cunning man, he studies the terrain, he calculates risk, and then he moves with deliberate violence. Because he knows this secret, fear is a signal, not a sentence. A prince who has never feared cannot be trusted. He has never had to choose between humiliation and strategy, between chaos and order. He has not been tested, and untested men are liabilities, not assets. The throne does not require courage, it requires cunning. It is better to be feared than loved, not because fear is pleasant, but because it is reliable. Love fades with time. It bends to mood, to gossip, to envy. But fear holds steady. It compels. It endures. It keeps your enemies awake at night and your allies in line during the day. Fear makes memory sharp. A man who fears you will not forget what you said. He will not misplace your warning. He will not mistake your silence for weakness. This is the truth the sentimental man cannot stomach. He wants to believe in fairness, in justice, in kindness. He wants to believe the world rewards virtue. But virtue without force is decoration. It is a dagger without a blade. Let us speak plainly. You are scared because you still have something to lose. That is power. That is leverage. A man with nothing to lose is a beast, unpredictable and dangerous. But a man who knows exactly what he's afraid of, that is a strategist. That is a ruler in the making. Fear clarifies the stakes. It strips away distractions. It forces the mind to focus on survival, adaptation, and advantage. When you are afraid, you stop pretending, you stop explaining, you start observing, you start listening. And if you are clever, you begin to move, not toward safety, but toward position. The battlefield is not for the fearless, it is for the precise. The man who uses his fear to sharpen his senses survives longer than the one who ignores it. Those who ridicule fear are often hiding their own. They boast loudly, seeking applause to silence the tremor in their gut. But the wise man is quiet. He does not dismiss fear, he analyzes it. He does not share it, he weaponizes it. He does not flee from it, he extracts from it a plan. Imagine a storm. The fool builds a tent and prays. The wise man digs into the mountain, studies the wind, and reroutes the river. That is power, not in resisting nature, but in bending it. So too with fear. You do not eliminate it, you redirect it. You turn it into caution, into preparation, into ruthless timing. Fear tells you where your weaknesses are, it tells you where you must fortify, and it tells you who you will become if you fail. Now observe the pattern. Every great betrayal begins with fear. Every collapse of loyalty, every broken alliance, every sudden silence in the court, it all starts when someone becomes afraid. And what do they fear? Exposure, irrelevance, replacement. Understand this, and you can manipulate any room you walk into. You don't need to threaten. You only need to remind. A glance, a pause, a single delayed word. Let their imagination do the rest. Because fear doesn't need loudness, it needs silence. That's where it grows. In ambiguity, in uncertainty, in the unknown. And the man who can master that atmosphere, he controls the game. He doesn't fight battles. He makes others beg to avoid them. This is why being scared is the best thing that could happen to you. It means you are awake. It means the stakes are real. It means you are standing on the edge of something that matters. Do not run from it. Study it. Trace it to its source. Who are you afraid of? Why? What could they take from you? What have you made too precious? Where have you grown soft? These are not philosophical questions. They are strategic ones. And the man who answers them honestly becomes dangerous. Not because he eliminates his fear, but because he now owns it. Because he now walks into the room with it beside him, not behind him. And everyone can feel that difference, especially your enemies. They will test you. They will speak softly to confuse you, loudly to intimidate you. They will offer friendship to disarm you, and kindness to bind you. But your fear, your precious, intelligent fear, will see through them if you trust it, if you listen to it, if you learn its language. You see, fear is not weakness. Fear is knowledge delivered with urgency. It is your instinct dressed in armor, and when harnessed, it becomes more useful than any sword. The man who feels no fear is either too stupid to understand danger or too arrogant to prepare for it. Both die quickly, but the man who studies his fear survives. He adapts. He strikes with precision, not emotion. He becomes what others only pretend to be, powerful. And so you must stop resenting your fear and begin refining it. Like a sculptor chiseling away at raw stone, you must shape the terror until only clarity remains. When you feel the quickening in your chest, the tightening of your breath, do not mistake it for panic. It is awareness. It is the soul snapping awake. In that moment, you are more alive than the numb masses sleepwalking through their routines. You are confronting life as it is, volatile, indifferent, and full of consequence. The average man anesthetizes himself with entertainment, with routine, with meaningless rituals to silence this alarm. But the prince does not seek silence. He seeks signal, and fear is signal, pure and unfiltered. If you are to lead, to dominate, to rule, not just others but yourself, you must become fluent in fear's dialect. Each tremor, each doubt, each flicker of anxiety is data. It tells you where your enemies might strike. It tells you where you've grown complacent. It tells you what you are still unwilling to let go of. Pay attention, because the man who ignores fear walks into traps he could have seen coming. And the man who brags about having none invites destruction with a smile on his face. There is no virtue in blindness. There is only death. But fear grants vision, an eerie, lucid kind of sight that shows you every weakness in the castle walls, every crack in the mask of your enemies, and most importantly, every lie you tell yourself. Let's speak now of your reputation, your image, the theater of power. Many believe it must be one of confidence, of impenetrable certainty, that to inspire fear in others, you must appear fearless yourself. But this is shallow, a performance. True authority radiates from the man who has already conquered his own fear, not hidden it, not denied it, but dissected it, studied it, and turned it into discipline. His stillness is not the absence of fear, but the presence of control. He walks slowly because he has measured the terrain. He speaks quietly because he knows noise is weakness. He does not react, not because he is numb, but because he already forecasted the game 3 moves ago. The crowd calls this courage, but in truth, it is calculation rooted in fear, perfected by experience. Do not forget, every empire that collapsed, every dynasty that crumbled, every general who fell because of ignored fear. They thought themselves invincible. They believed their power permanent. They mistook obedience for loyalty, applause for security, and so they dismissed the warnings. They surrounded themselves with flatterers. They dulled the voices of dissent. They ignored the small signals, the uneasy silence, the tightened smiles of allies. This is how destruction enters, not through force, but through negligence. The wise ruler studies not just the faces of his enemies, but the silence of his friends. Fear does not just tell you who wants to kill you, it tells you who no longer needs you, and that is often more dangerous. The man who uses fear properly is never surprised. That is his edge. While others are shocked by betrayal, by collapse, by misfortune, he nods in silence. He saw it coming. He planned for it. He gave no warning, because power is not in what you say, it is in what you already know. Let your fear show you the storm, but let your discipline decide when you raise the sails. This is not paranoia, this is prudence. A man ruled by fear is weak, but a man who rules with fear, both within and without, is unshakable. He does not react to threat, he provokes it, measures the response, and strikes only when the cost is low and the reward permanent. Now listen carefully. You are not being hunted, not yet, but you are being watched. Always, your competitors, your rivals, your so-called friends, they all observe your movements. They look for hesitation. They look for emotional tells. They look for softness, and the moment you pretend fear doesn't exist, they know you are bluffing. They will wait until your delusion creates a gap, until your false confidence becomes a pattern. Then they strike. This is why self-awareness is not some poetic ideal. It is survival. To know what you are afraid of, and to admit it to yourself before anyone else does, is to seize power over your own story. The man who cannot do this becomes a puppet in someone else's. So I ask you now, what are you scared of? And more importantly, what are you doing with that fear? Are you letting it keep you still, or are you letting it sharpen your movement? Are you hiding from it, or studying it like a blueprint? You must become cold here, not cruel, not violent, but precise. Look at your fear the way a surgeon looks at a tumor with ruthless curiosity. Cut into it, examine every layer, find where it came from, who gave it to you, and how it keeps you weak. Then remove what is unnecessary and weaponize what remains. This is the transformation, not in becoming fearless, but in becoming fluent in fear. And now that you hold your fear in your hands, raw, trembling, honest, you must decide what to build with it. Most men, when confronted with this moment, retreat. They reach for comfort. They return to the familiar prisons of routine and mediocrity. They fear their fear. But the Machiavellian man does something different. He turns it into architecture. He builds fortresses from it. He crafts strategies from it. He molds it into rituals of vigilance. Fear, in his world, is not a warning to run. It is a signal to prepare, a call to consolidate resources, to test loyalty, to count every grain of gold and sharpen every blade. Fear makes him tighten the reins and silence the room, and when the time comes, it makes him strike first. You see, control is not the elimination of emotion. It is the ability to isolate it, observe it without drowning in it, and then use it for precise effect. The prince must feel fear but never act on it without calculation. He must appear serene while his mind is engineering escape routes, pressure points, and contingencies. Because those who panic signal vulnerability, and vulnerability invites vultures. It invites traitors to test their luck. It invites allies to renegotiate the terms of their loyalty. The minute you react emotionally, you surrender initiative. But if you can master the art of stillness under pressure, of calm while fire rages around you, you become untouchable. That is the paradox. Fear can destroy a man or crown him. It all depends on whether he owns it or it owns him. Consider the lion. It does not roar at every rustle in the grass. It waits, it watches, it calculates. And when it moves with total conviction, not out of rage, not out of panic, but out of dominance. This is what fear must become in you. A lens, not a leash. Most men use fear to justify their paralysis. They say, I need more time, I'm not ready, what if I fail? But power belongs to those who use that same fear to act before others do, who move when others hesitate, who know that the moment of doubt is the perfect time to advance, because everyone else is frozen. Your enemies stall when they're afraid. That is when you act, not loudly, not foolishly, but with cold, surgical precision. Let me tell you a secret few ever admit. Every throne was first built from fear. Not from hope, not from virtue, from fear. The fear of irrelevance, the fear of weakness, the fear of being ruled by someone less worthy. And in that fear, the first rulers found their will to dominate. They understood what lesser men refused to see. That fear is not your enemy. It is your inheritance. It is your compass in the jungle of human ambition. The man who is not afraid to lose does not fight. The man who fears irrelevance, who fears being forgotten, who fears dying before he has carved his name into the stone of time, that man builds empires. You are not here to be safe. You are not here to be understood. You are here to move through the world with influence. And influence does not come to the pleasant, the agreeable, the harmless. It comes to those who have faced the dragon of their own fear and tamed it into a weapon. You cannot intimidate a man who has made peace with discomfort. You cannot manipulate a man who already understands his own darkness. This is your task, to become so familiar with fear that it no longer surprises you, that when it comes knocking, you are already seated, already watching, already waiting with your strategy in hand. That is the difference between rulers and the ruled. Preparation. They will never teach you this. They will teach you to be brave, to be bold, to be kind. But they will not teach you how to study fear, because fear makes men dangerous. It awakens the dormant parts of the psyche. It creates independence, and independent minds do not obey. They do not kneel. They do not crave approval. They calculate it. So you must teach yourself. You must become your own strategist, your own commander. You must document your fears like an enemy's battle plan, catalog them, name them, predict their patterns, and when the time comes, turn them into your edge, into your fuel, into your legend. The man who does not fear is either lying or dead. And yet you still hear them speak of fear as if it is shameful, as if it is weakness, to be hidden beneath false smiles and empty bravado. But look closer. Those who mock fear the loudest are often its most loyal prisoners. Their entire persona is armor, welded together from denial. They bark loudly because they tremble silently. But the one who admits his fear, who wears it not as a burden but as a blade, that man is already in command. Because when you accept your fear, you stop needing to perform, you stop needing to impress, and that absence of performance is unsettling. Others can no longer read you. You've become a black box in a world of open books, and the unknown always commands respect. Let us go deeper. Fear is not just a teacher, it is a gatekeeper. It separates the real from the fake, the initiates from the imitators. Those who cannot face their fear will never know what they are capable of. They will remain in the safe zones of obedience and mediocrity, forever ruled by those who had the courage to venture into the darkness. This is the truth no one wants to say aloud. Most people are not kept small by others. They are kept small by their refusal to confront what terrifies them. And so they create elaborate justifications. They dress up their avoidance as morality, as humility, as responsibility. But the prince knows better. He sees fear as a throne to be seized, not a trap to be escaped. Every moment of hesitation, every excuse, every delay, it all reveals a man not in control of his fear but ruled by it. And what of pain? Pain and fear are siblings. Wherever one goes, the other follows. But pain is not the punishment. Pain is the currency. It is what you pay to become dangerous, to become clear, to become cold. You cannot purchase dominance with comfort. You must bleed for it, not always in flesh, but in illusion, in pride, in ego. When you feel the sting of fear, ask yourself, what is being stripped away? What comfort am I addicted to? What story have I outgrown? The Machiavellian man welcomes that sting. He knows it is the price of becoming untouchable. He pays it in silence. And when he returns, he is sharper, leaner, more precise. Pain did not break him, it carved him. You must become immune to the manipulations that fear makes possible. Guilt, shame, intimidation. These are tools used against the man who still trembles at the thought of rejection or judgment. But the man who has made peace with being hated, misunderstood, even exiled, he is free. You cannot coerce what you cannot threaten, and you cannot threaten the man who has already walked through fire. This is the final gift of fear, detachment. When you realize fear cannot be avoided, only mastered, you stop chasing approval, you stop begging for safety. You start moving with a stillness that makes others nervous. Not because you are reckless, but because you have already done the inner war, and nothing outside you can match what you've already conquered within. Do not mistake this for cruelty. The man who has mastered fear is not numb, he is disciplined. His mercy is not weakness, it is strategy. He chooses when to spare and when to strike, because he is not governed by panic. He does not flinch when challenged. He does not beg when threatened. He does not collapse when isolated. He observes, he calculates, and then, with absolute resolve, he decides. That is true power, not noise, not rage, but the quiet execution of a long-prepared plan. And every step of that plan was informed by fear, not the kind that freezes, but the kind that forecasts. The kind that maps out escape routes before the fire even begins. So ask yourself now, what would you do if you were no longer ruled by fear but guided by it? What would change? Who would you stop pleasing? What would you stop tolerating? What ruthless move have you delayed because you were waiting to feel ready? Readiness is a myth. You are not supposed to feel ready. You are supposed to feel terrified and do it anyway, because that's where the threshold is. That's where the mask cracks. That's where your old self dies, and something colder, smarter, and more focused is born. And once you taste that, once you realize you can feel fear and still move, you will never again envy the man who plays it safe. You will pity him. It is time you understood. Fear is not just a reaction. It is an opportunity. It is a doorway that only a few ever dare to open. Most pace in front of it, peeking through the cracks waiting for permission. But the Machiavellian man does not wait. He walks through, fully aware that on the other side is no guarantee, only exposure. But he understands that exposure is where leverage is born. You cannot manipulate what you don't understand. And you cannot understand the game until you've stood inside your own fear and watched what it does to you. What parts of you scream? What parts betray you? What parts lie? That self-exposure is the blueprint. That is how you begin to control not only yourself, but everyone else still running from their own reflection. Your enemies fear exposure. They fear being seen for what they truly are. So they hide in titles, in rituals, in institutions. They wrap themselves in status and tradition, but you will learn to look through all of that, because you have stared into the abyss of your own insecurity and didn't blink. Once you have done that, no mask can deceive you. You recognize fear in the eyes of others instantly, in their over-explaining, in their need for approval, in their emotional overreactions. The frightened man shows his entire hand, just to feel in control. And when you see it, you do not confront, you do not correct, you store the data, you let him talk, you let him try to dominate, and then when the moment arrives, you take everything from him with calm, surgical precision. This is the strategy the world never teaches, because if people learned to harness fear, they would stop obeying, they would stop conforming, they would become ungovernable. And systems of control do not survive ungovernable minds. That is why fear is framed as something to eliminate, not something to refine. But understand this, fear cannot be erased. It can only be reassigned from paralysis to precision, from avoidance to attack, from chaos to clarity. The moment you redirect your fear toward action, it becomes indistinguishable from power. You no longer shake when challenged, you sharpen. You no longer doubt when alone, you calculate. You no longer retreat when cornered, you strike. Look at history. Every revolutionary, every tyrant, every leader who altered the course of civilization, they were all afraid, but they did not stop. Their fear became a compass. It showed them what to dismantle, what to burn, what to dominate. Fear was the ink they used to write their names into time. You are no different. You have the same primitive machinery, the same raw data, but you have been taught to apologize for it, to soften it, to medicate it. They've trained you to be agreeable, because agreeable men do not build thrones, they applaud them from below. But the man who rewires his fear, who trains it like a beast, who uses it not as a leash but as a whip, that man builds something that lasts beyond his lifetime. You will be tested, you will be isolated, you will be called cold, arrogant, cruel. But these are the words of the fearful, those who saw the threshold and stepped back. They do not hate your ambition. They hate the fact that your fear did not stop you. They see in you what they refuse to become. And so they mock, they moralize, they shame. But their noise is proof that you are already becoming something they cannot manipulate. You must not flinch. Let them talk. Let them stare. Let them misunderstand. And while they perform, you plan. While they panic, you prepare. While they seek comfort, you sharpen your edge. Because comfort is a cage, and you were not made to live in a cage. This is your moment, not tomorrow. Not when it feels safe, now. With fear still beating in your chest, with your doubts still whispering, with your hands still trembling. Now is when you move, because the man who waits for the absence of fear will wait forever. But the man who moves with fear in his veins, who embraces its message, who respects its warning, that man is unstoppable. Not because he is fearless, but because he is fluent. Fluent in the language of war, of ambition, of power. He does not deny the storm, he becomes it. And when the storm breaks, when the world begins to shake and the cowards retreat into silence, you will stand still. Not because you are unafraid, but because you have been here before. Because you have trained in this very chaos. While they prayed for peace, you rehearsed war. While they begged for guarantees, you mastered risk. You did not seek comfort, you sought clarity. And now, as the fragile masks fall from the faces of your enemies, as their illusions shatter in panic, you will not need to speak. Your presence will say everything. Fear, once your master, has become your signature. It is etched into your posture, your gaze, your timing, and those who once laughed at your silence will now study it. Because silence backed by power is more terrifying than any scream. They will not understand how you got here. They will think it was natural talent, luck, some secret they never learned. But you will know the truth. It was fear. It was the 1,000 quiet battles you fought when no one watched. It was the decision to move despite the shaking hands, to speak despite the dry throat, to strike despite the inner voice begging you to wait. This is what separates the rulers from the ruled. Not charm, not popularity, but the willingness to walk alone into the fire and come out colder. And you did not come out untouched. You came out refined. You carry scars like trophies. Not because you are proud of pain, but because you know what it bought you, vision. Now you see them clearly. You see the predictable flinches, the eager compliance, the hunger for validation. You see what people cling to when they're afraid. Reputation, routine, relationships. And in this awareness, you gain advantage. You no longer speak to their words. You speak to their fears. You no longer negotiate with their logic. You negotiate with their survival instinct. This is how power works. It does not appeal to reason. It appeals to necessity. You must become the necessity, the unavoidable option, the one they fear losing more than they fear obeying. That is the position from which true control is exercised, not from charm, but from calibrated dominance. Understand this, your fear was not a curse. It was the initiation. Every lion was once a trembling cub. Every tyrant was once a frightened child. But they did not stay there. They did not freeze. They moved, one claw at a time, and with each calculated motion, they killed a piece of their hesitation, until what remained was not fearlessness, but precision. You do not need to be bold. You need to be prepared. You do not need to roar. You need to outlast. That is the Machiavellian path. Not a loud rebellion, but a silent evolution. And now you have crossed the threshold. You are no longer the one who fears the fire. You are the one who lights it. Others will come to you now, curious, intimidated, confused. They will want the benefits of your strength without paying your price. They will ask for your secrets. Do not give them too much. Power diluted is power wasted. Let them earn it. Let them burn a little. Let them confront their own demons in solitude. Because until they do, they will never wield anything but borrowed influence. And borrowed influence is as fragile as the ego it protects. But yours is built on something else. Something earned. Something irreversible. You did not inherit control. You created it from friction. You forged it from fear. So now, you do not wait. You do not explain. You do not apologize. You move, like a shadow at the edge of the room, like a whisper no one dares to question, like a name spoken only in warnings. Because you no longer react to fear, you command with it. You no longer chase peace. You dictate its terms. You no longer need to be understood. You only need to be obeyed. And in this final transformation, you become the one thing fear cannot touch, necessary. If you've made it this far, it means fear is no longer just an enemy to you. It's a signal, a weapon, and a guide. You've already taken the first step most people will never take, facing the mirror without flinching. You've realized that fear is not weakness. It's the raw material of strength. And if you can stand with it, shape it, and let it sharpen you, there is nothing that can stop you. So tell me in the comments, will you let fear rule you, or will you rule with it? If this message hit something deep inside you, write, I master my fear. Let's see how many of us are ready to rise with clarity, power, and discipline. And remember, the next video is waiting to forge you even sharper. Watch it. You need it more than you think. I'll see you there. They told you to share. Share your ideas. Share your struggles. Share your dreams. From childhood, you were conditioned to believe that speaking your goals aloud would bring them to life, that the more people knew of your intentions, the more accountable you'd be, that telling the world was the first step toward achievement. But what if I told you the opposite is true? What if the very act of sharing your goals was the surest way to poison them? Niccolo Machiavelli understood something our modern age has forgotten. Power is not born from exposure. It is born in silence, quiet intention, hidden resolve. He wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved when one of the two must be lacking. And I will take that one step further. It is much safer to be silent than to be understood, especially when your ambitions are still in seed form. In this world of noise, those who hold their tongue command more than those who speak. Look around. We live in a culture obsessed with declarations. A man cannot make a decision without tweeting it. A woman cannot dream without broadcasting it. And in this compulsion to share, they leak the very thing that makes their goals powerful, their mystery. A goal spoken too soon is a goal robbed of force. Why? Because the moment it leaves your mouth, it enters the realm of judgment, resistance, and interference. You awaken forces you do not yet see. Envy, doubt, dismissal. People will not applaud you. They will begin to measure you, to weigh you, to doubt you, and worse, you will begin to perform for them rather than build for yourself. When you speak your goals prematurely, you invite false rewards, praise, encouragement, a pat on the back for something you haven't yet earned. Your mind confuses that praise with accomplishment, and the fire that was once driving you, it fades. Why continue climbing if they're already clapping? Machiavelli warned us not just of enemies, but of perceptions. A prudent man, he said, should always follow in the path trodden by great men and imitate those who have been supreme. But the greats did not shout their assent. They moved in calculated silence. They built behind veils. They revealed their power only when it was too late for their rivals to react. So why do modern minds crave this need to announce? It is weakness disguised as boldness. It is fear masked as confidence. The insecure man shares his goals to feel validated. The strategic man shares nothing. He lets the world assume, and then he breaks their assumptions. Have you noticed this? That those who talk the most often do the least. That the loudest voices in the room rarely hold the most power. There's a reason for this. Talking is easy. Action is difficult. Silence is terrifying to those who lack inner strength. But to the Machiavellian mind, silence is home. Silence is strength. Silence is control. Let me ask you, have you ever told someone your goal and suddenly felt less motivated to pursue it? Have you ever announced your plans only to watch them unravel in front of your eyes? That is no accident. That is the cost of early exposure, because the moment you declare your ambition, you invite scrutiny, and scrutiny kills momentum. People will ask questions you're not ready to answer. They'll raise doubts you're not prepared to confront. They'll mirror their own limitations onto your vision, and if you're not careful, you'll start to believe them. Do not give them that power. A lion does not explain its hunt. A fox does not announce its move. The true strategist moves in silence, not because he fears being seen, but because he understands that being seen too early is a form of weakness. There is a passage in The Prince where Machiavelli writes, "It is necessary for a prince to learn how not to be good." In other words, to understand when the virtues of the world, openness, vulnerability, transparency, must be discarded for the sake of the mission. Sharing your goals is considered virtuous, but it is not strategic. And in the world of power, strategy devours virtue. This is not a call to paranoia. It is a call to wisdom. Your goals are sacred, and sacred things are not thrown into the streets for all to trample. You do not unveil a masterpiece while it is still being painted. You do not expose a building's foundation to the storm while it is still being laid. So what do you do instead? You protect the process. You nurture it in darkness. You build your ambition like an underground city, quietly, brick by brick, until one day the doors open and the world is left speechless. Because you did not tell them, you showed them. The man who speaks less holds more cards. The man who is underestimated is given room to grow. The man who moves without noise is free from interference. And the man who values silence over applause, he is dangerous, because no one sees him coming. There is another danger, one even more insidious. When you share your goals, you begin to internalize them as identity instead of strategy. You start saying, "I am a writer," instead of "I am becoming a writer." You say, "I will build a business," instead of building the business. Words create illusions. They offer comfort instead of progress. They make you feel closer to your goal without actually earning proximity. The brain releases dopamine just from saying what you will do, so it loses the drive to actually do it. This is how dreams die, not with failure, but with applause for things not yet done. Keep your mouth shut. This is not weakness, it is not shame, it is not secrecy, it is sovereignty. You own your process, you protect it from the weather, from weak opinions, from shallow validation, from the well-meaning distractions of those who do not carry your vision. And when the time comes, when the work is complete, when your goal is not a whisper but a weapon, then you strike. Without warning, without explanation, without apology, and they will ask, "Where did this come from?" And the answer will be, "You never needed to know." So now you understand. Silence isn't just the absence of noise, it is a weapon. But here's what most people get wrong. They think silence is passive, that staying quiet means staying still, that by not sharing, they are doing nothing, and that is precisely why they fail. Machiavelli would laugh at such simplicity. In The Prince, he reminds us that a wise man does at once what a fool does at last. Silence is not a delay, it is a strategy. It's not that you're doing nothing, it's that you're doing everything without announcing it. Every hour you stay quiet is an hour your competitors are exposed. Every day you withhold your moves is a day others reveal theirs. The man who shares is handing out a map. The man who listens is building one. There's a reason war generals do not broadcast their attacks before they strike. Because to win you must surprise, and to surprise you must conceal. A publicly declared goal loses its edge. It's no longer a dagger. It becomes a dull object for others to prod, examine, and question. And yet modern culture pushes the opposite. We celebrate the reveal, the announcement, the big dream tweet. But Machiavelli did not play for applause. He played for advantage, and the advantage belongs not to the loud, but to the quiet. Let me show you the psychological damage of sharing your goals. When you tell someone your dream, they give you a response. That response, no matter how minor, becomes a mirror. If they are skeptical, you begin to doubt. If they are dismissive, you shrink. If they are supportive but fake, you feel empty. And in all these cases, your emotional energy has been compromised. This is why silence is not weakness, it is armor. The world is not built to support ambition. It is built to normalize mediocrity. And when you express something beyond the norm, you activate a kind of social immune system. People will subconsciously attack what they don't understand. Not because they hate you, but because your ambition reminds them of their own stagnation. Machiavelli saw this clearly in courts and kingdoms. Every prince had enemies, but more dangerous than enemies were the courtiers, those who smiled, nodded, and waited for their moment. These are the people around you today. Friends who mean well, but secretly hope you don't change too much. Peers who cheer for your growth, so long as it doesn't outpace theirs. They'll never say it aloud, but their energy will betray them. And once you've shared your goals, they are now invested in your outcome. This is no longer your private path. It has become a performance, and performance kills authenticity. You stop refining your vision based on truth and start adjusting it based on reaction. You seek likes instead of progress, reassurance instead of mastery, and little by little, your mission becomes theirs. Your dream becomes fragile. So what is the Machiavellian response? Do not perform, do not announce, build beneath. Let your vision ferment in silence. Let your goals sharpen in the shadows. Work without telling anyone, not your parents, not your friends, not your audience. Let them believe whatever they wish. You do not owe them a press release. In fact, the less they know, the more power you hold. They will underestimate you. Let them. They will misread you. Let them. They will assume you are stagnant. Let them. Because every miscalculation they make in your favor is an advantage in yours. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon, he didn't hold a press conference. He moved swiftly, quietly, decisively, and by the time the world reacted, it was too late. That is how you act when your goals are real. Not in words, in silence, in movement. Now let's speak of energy. Sharing your goals disperses it. You spend energy telling others instead of becoming. You feel momentarily satisfied by their encouragement, which softens your internal drive. And worst of all, you become addicted to external reaction. That is not the energy of a ruler. That is the energy of a performer. But if you keep your energy contained, if you feed it to your craft, your discipline, your structure, then you become something else entirely. You become focused, relentless, dangerous. Machiavelli said, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." Understand what he meant. Words serve moments, but strategy serves outcomes. You owe no one a verbal contract about your future. You owe only results. This does not mean you never speak. It means you speak with precision. You speak after the work is done. You speak when silence is no longer useful. But until then, the mouth stays shut and the hands stay moving. Let your actions announce you. Let your results introduce you. Let your silence build the tension. So when you finally step forward, it is not with hope, but with certainty. Because by then the path will be built, the product will be formed, the reputation will echo before you even enter the room, and they will ask, "How long have you been working on this?" And you will answer, "Long enough to not need your permission." That is power. That is strategy. That is the Machiavellian way. So by now you see the truth. Silence isn't absence. It's preparation. It's protection. It's positioning. But let us go deeper. Why is it that the moment you share a goal, you feel exposed? Because you are. You've taken something internal, intimate, and handed it over to the outer world, where it no longer belongs only to you. And worse, you've given others the right to weigh in, to comment, to critique, and they will. Not because they know better, but because now they can. Machiavelli taught that the wise ruler reveals only what is necessary. That power is preserved not by transparency, but by control. And control begins with discretion. The man who speaks too soon speaks from ego. The man who waits speaks from leverage. There's a pattern you must start to recognize. Those who achieve long-term success rarely speak during their climb. They speak only once the fortress is built. Their interviews come after the empire is secure, not before, because when you speak too early, you activate forces of friction, jealousy, sabotage, doubt, imitation. And these forces are subtle. They don't come with red flags. They come with smiles, with casual questions, with helpful suggestions that dilute your focus and soften your intent. They come from people who seem harmless, because that's how influence hides. There is a Machiavellian principle buried in all this. Perception is power. And the more people see of your process, the more they believe they understand it. Once they believe they understand you, they stop fearing you. And once they stop fearing you, they stop respecting your potential. Understand this well. The man who is predictable is not powerful, he is manageable. If everyone knows what you want, where you're headed, what you're building, then they know how to position against you. They know when to move, when to wait, when to attack. That's not strategy. That's suicide. The fox survives not because it's strong, but because it's unreadable. And Machiavelli admired the fox for that very reason. A prince must be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves, to be both cunning and bold. But the cunning always comes first, the silence before the strike. Let's now talk about resistance. The more people know your goals, the more resistance you face, not only externally, but internally. You begin to hear their voices in your head. You begin to carry their expectations. And now, your mission has weight. You feel watched, judged, evaluated. And that pressure shifts your actions from clarity to performance. But when no one knows, you are free. Free to pivot, free to fail, free to experiment without ridicule, free to rise without friction. Freedom is the true reward of silence. You are not bound by promises, not boxed in by labels. You are invisible and therefore untouchable. This is why the most powerful figures in history moved in shadows. They disguised their intentions. They spoke in riddles. They smiled while plotting, because they understood something we forget. Once your strategy is exposed, it can be countered. But when it's hidden, it owns the board. Think of your ambition as a piece of architecture. The deeper the foundation, the taller the structure. But what is the foundation built in? Silence, time, repetition, not declarations. Do not confuse visibility with progress. Let others post updates. Let them live stream their process. Let them receive the dopamine of public praise. And then, watch them collapse under the pressure of unfinished promises and unmet expectations. Meanwhile, you remain in motion, calm, steady, building layer by layer, while the noise above distracts everyone else. Machiavelli warned rulers not to be swept away by public affection. Men are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, covetous. Do not build your goals on their applause. Do not mistake cheers for support. They will cheer for you today and forget your name tomorrow. Your only true ally is silence. It does not betray. It does not weaken. It does not ask questions. It simply protects. And in that silence you grow. You make mistakes no one sees. You experiment with moves no one tracks. You evolve into a version of yourself no one can predict. That is true transformation. You see, there is a reason magicians never reveal their methods. Once the trick is known, the wonder is gone, and your goals, your ambitions are no different. The moment you over-explain, you turn strategy into spectacle, and spectacle dies the moment it's understood. Keep your magic hidden, keep your plans sacred, because the more mystery you hold, the more influence you wield. Let others wonder, let them guess, let them whisper about what you might be doing, and while they talk, you execute. And when you finally emerge, not with words, but with undeniable results, they will not ask how you did it. They will ask when you did it, and your answer will be simple. When you were too busy watching, I was building. Now let us speak of interference. Not the loud, obvious kind, but the subtle forms, the ones that appear dressed as encouragement, as curiosity, as connection. It begins with a simple question. What are you working on? They ask with a smile. You answer politely. You describe your idea, your plan, your goal, And in that moment, you feel seen. A small spark of satisfaction. But what you don't see is what you just traded: control. Because now they know, now they have a piece of it. And with knowledge comes access. They will begin to comment, to advise, to ask questions. Not because they're trying to hurt you, but because that's what people do when they're given a glimpse. They probe, they shape, they pull you from the inside. And slowly the vision that once lived only in your mind is now shared real estate. You are no longer alone in it. You are no longer sovereign. Machiavelli warned against this kind of softness. It is necessary to be a fox to recognize traps. And there is no trap more dangerous than the one disguised as a friend's interest. Not because it's malicious, but because it's distracting. It fractures your concentration. It invites detours, and detours kill momentum. What was once a straight, silent path now becomes a maze of second-guessing. You begin to ask, what would they think? You begin to wait for reactions before you act, and the worst part, you begin to doubt what you once knew with certainty. This is not strength. This is sabotage, and you allowed it. The more you share, the more you dilute. Think of it like pouring a strong wine into 10 glasses. What was once potent is now weak, spread too thin to have impact. Your goals must remain concentrated, kept in the dark like rare seeds until the roots are deep enough to withstand the sun. But here's where modern minds protest. They say, isn't it good to be accountable? To have someone know so they can check on you? Machiavelli would scoff at this. Accountability is not owed to others, it is owed to yourself. A ruler who needs others to keep him on track is not fit to rule. You don't build discipline through dependence, you build it through clarity and consequence. If you fail, let it be your own hand, not the weight of their expectations, that drives you to rise again. True power comes from being internally driven, not externally validated. Because here's the truth, the more people expect something from you, the more you start building for them. Not for your mission, not for your purpose, for their belief in you. And suddenly your path becomes a performance, a spectacle. Do not perform, execute, do not announce, deliver. This is how empires are built, not with noise, but with intention. Imagine this clearly. A man works in silence. No one sees him, no one asks. He declines to explain. He smiles but says little. While others boast, he sharpens. While others speak, he studies. While others seek attention, he collects leverage. And then one day he arrives, complete, composed, irrefutable. Not because he asked for applause, but because he earned it in solitude. Now contrast that with the man who shares every step, every plan, every launch. His audience cheers him on. They say, "You've got this." They mean well, but with every cheer, his hunger fades. He begins to feel full, without having eaten. And then when the execution fails, he is forced to explain, to make excuses, to reframe the timeline, to reassure those he never needed to involve in the first place. Now he is not just dealing with failure, he is managing perception. That is a loss of freedom, a loss of time, a loss of focus, and it is entirely avoidable. Machiavelli said, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." Understand what he's saying. Plans change, strategies evolve, and if you've already spoken, you're now chained to a version of the plan that may no longer serve you. Silence gives you permission to adapt, to pivot, to grow without explanation, and that freedom is priceless. But let's go even deeper. Let's talk about the power of mystique. The less people know, the more they wonder. The more they wonder, the more they respect. And the more they respect, the more they hesitate to interfere. Mystery creates space, it creates distance, it creates the illusion of depth, even before it is earned. And in the game of power, illusion is half the battle. You do not need to be great to appear great. You need only be unreadable. Silence builds the myth, noise destroys it. So train yourself to speak less, to smile more, to observe longer, to reveal only what cannot be used against you. Because everything you say becomes a tool. In the hands of the wrong person, it becomes a weapon, and in the hands of someone close, it becomes betrayal. Do not hand out the blueprint to your kingdom. Build it behind walls, and when it stands, let them try to guess how you did it. Let them guess where the gate is. Let them guess where you began. Let them guess, because guessing gives you time. Control, superiority. Machiavelli understood this game. He saw how perception moved kings and controlled empires. And the first rule of perception is this: control what they know, and you control what they do. So let them speak, let them share, let them live loud and fall hard. You stay quiet, because you are not here to be understood. You are here to become undeniable. There comes a point in every pursuit where doubt creeps in. not because you are weak, but because you are alone. The path of silence is not glamorous, it is not easy, it is not celebrated, it is lonely, disciplined, and misunderstood. And that is precisely why it works. You must learn to walk this path without applause, without reassurance, without someone checking in. Because if you truly want something to become real, it must be forged in solitude first, before the world sees it, before the world touches it. Machiavelli would remind you, men judge more by the eye than by the hand. They believe what they see, not what you say. So what use is there in talking, when you could be creating something they cannot deny? You will be tempted to explain, to clarify, to justify your silence. Resist it, because the minute you begin explaining your absence, you begin breaking your power. The mysterious man owes no explanations, he simply moves, and in time, they understand, he was building. Understand this deeply. Every time you speak, you give shape to expectation, and every expectation becomes a prison, a deadline, a performance, and soon you're no longer building your goal, you're maintaining their illusion of your progress. But when you stay silent, you stay fluid, flexible, unbound. You can evolve without resistance. You can stumble without shame. You can change your entire approach without having to make announcements. This is the advantage of quiet power. You are not burdened by the image of progress. You are focused on actual progress. Now consider the predators of this world, not in the jungle, but in business, in power, in relationships. They are not loud, they are not visible, they are patient, they are observant, they wait, and when the moment is right, they strike, not with noise but with precision. Machiavelli admired this kind of cold timing. He didn't romanticize bravery, he studied effectiveness. And effectiveness, more often than not, moves without a sound. Let others walk loudly, let them declare what's coming, let them promise, predict, perform. You sharpen your edge in the dark. And here's a secret you must know. Silence intimidates. People are unnerved by those they cannot read. They project onto you, they assume, they fear what you might be capable of. That fear, it is leverage. Because power is not always about what you do, it is often about what people think you can do. And if they don't know your plan, your reach, your strength, then they cannot prepare for it. They cannot defend against it. They cannot diminish it. So say nothing, let them guess. They'll ask, what are you working on? You smile. They'll say, you've been quiet lately. You nod. They'll push, anything exciting coming? You change the subject, not because you're weak, but because you're dangerous. Because there's something growing beneath the surface, and they have no idea how far it's come. Silence is not empty. It is full of direction, discipline, detachment. It is a crucible where real goals are forged, unpolluted by reaction. But now let me speak to your fear. The fear that if you don't share your goals, you'll drift, lose focus, fall behind. That is the lie of a weak mind. That is the lie of someone who depends on pressure from others to move forward. That is not leadership. That is dependence disguised as ambition. You must learn to self-generate fire, to move without eyes on you, to get up when no one cares, to stay locked in, not for applause, but because you said you would. Because the mission is real to you. This is the power of internal clarity. It doesn't need affirmation. It doesn't need permission. It doesn't need to be posted or liked or shared. It simply is, steady, unshaken, focused. And when the world finally sees what you've been building, they won't believe it happened overnight. They'll say it was sudden, unexpected, fast, but you will know the truth. It wasn't fast. It was built during thousands of silent mornings, quiet nights, lonely decisions, days when no one asked, months when no one noticed, years when no one clapped. That's how real power rises, in the shadows. Machiavelli knew this truth centuries ago. He who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived. And in today's world, people deceive themselves. They confuse expression for progress, talking for doing, visibility for power. Let them leak their strength in the form of updates. You will move in silence, you will build in silence, you will arrive in silence. And when the door finally opens and they see what you've done, there will be no questions left. Because the results will speak a language louder than any words you could have ever offered. So if you find yourself tempted to share your next step, don't. Take it instead, and let the sound of your footsteps be the only announcement they ever get. There is a reason the most dangerous people you'll ever meet are the quiet ones. Not because they are hiding weakness, but because they are hiding discipline. The man who speaks little, who moves with intention, who smiles without revealing his mind, he is the one shaping the world in silence. While others are loud, distracted and exposed, he is building something beneath the surface, something real, something irreversible. Machiavelli would nod at this. He would tell you that power is not merely about action, but about timing, perception, and restraint. He would tell you that silence is not absence, it is concentration, it is density, it is potential, waiting for the right moment to become kinetic. And so we return to the beginning. Why is sharing your goals the worst thing you can do? Because it feels good, and that's the trap. It gives you a shortcut to satisfaction, but real satisfaction does not come from being seen. It comes from becoming the kind of person who does not need to be seen, because the work is enough, the process is enough, the mastery is enough. You don't need to say you're building an empire. You need to build one. And when you do, you won't need to explain anything. The doors will open, the results will speak, the silence will finally make sense. But until then, stay hidden, guard your path. Let no one near it until the path is strong enough to carry the weight of their eyes, their opinions, their expectations. You owe no one your timeline. You owe no one your draft. You owe no one your beginning. Your story is still being written, and every time you protect it with silence, you sharpen the ending. Now listen closely. There will come a time when you're surrounded by noise, by pressure, by temptation to prove, to share, to seek validation. And in that moment, you must remember this truth. You don't rise by being loud. You rise by being consistent in silence. They will not see you coming. That is the point, because when you finally arrive, you will be undeniable. Not because you asked for attention, but because you made attention irrelevant. And now if you've made it this far, it's because a part of you is already ready for this new path. A part of you has already understood that being celebrated means nothing, if in exchange, you must abandon your own process. That real power begins the moment you choose to walk alone, on your own terms, by your own timing. So now tell me in the comments, are you ready to be ignored, misunderstood, even dismissed, in the name of your inner strength? Are you ready to pay the price of becoming untouchable? If this message touched you, if it awakens something real, write it now. I choose silence. Let's see how many of you are truly ready for that transition. And don't forget, keep watching the next video. It matters more than you think. I'll meet you there. In a world obsessed with visibility, where every action is broadcast and every thought is shared, we are told to be seen. Flaunt your wins, announce your plans, showcase your success. The modern creed worships exposure as power. But what if that's a lie? What if the very act of showing off, of loudly advertising your strength, is the fastest path to losing it? Niccolo Machiavelli, the man often misunderstood as ruthless, was not merely a strategist of power. He was its quiet observer, and what he observed, over and over, was this: those who display too much too soon become targets. The peacock may dazzle, but it is also the first to be hunted. The powerful don't announce their might. They let others feel it, often too late to resist. Machiavelli lived in an era where silence meant survival. In Renaissance Florence, power was not a badge you wore, it was a dagger you concealed. The streets were filled with men who died for boasting, rulers who fell because they couldn't resist showing the world how powerful they were. Machiavelli watched and he learned, strength that is flaunted becomes weakness. The strongest man in the room is never the loudest. He's the one watching, calculating, and waiting while others betray themselves with their need to be admired. And yet today we do the opposite. We share our goals on social media before taking the first step. We post victories in real time. We reveal strategies, emotions, relationships, all in the name of authenticity. But what we call authenticity, Machiavelli would call strategic suicide. You see, in politics, as in life, the loud become predictable, and the predictable become vulnerable. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are." Those words are not advice, they are a warning. Appearances invite judgment, exposure invites attack. The more you reveal, the easier it becomes for others to define you, oppose you, or destroy you. In the court of power, mystery is not a flaw, it is armor. Think of the loud entrepreneur who boasts of plans before they've succeeded. Watch how competitors steal those plans or sabotage them. Think of the person in a meeting who dominates every conversation. They may sound strong, but they quietly lose respect. Now picture the one who says little, but moves with clarity. Others adjust to their presence. They aren't loud, they are undeniable. Why does this happen? Because speech is commitment, and commitment too early is limitation. When you speak, you declare your position. When you show off, you reveal your weapons. The moment you do, others begin preparing countermeasures. Machiavelli understood that real strength lies not in being praised, but in being underestimated. The fox survives not because it brags about its cleverness, but because it conceals its moves until it's too late. The lion rules not by roaring endlessly, but by the threat of force withheld. Modern culture, however, confuses noise with dominance. We are trained to equate presence with posting, leadership with loudness, power with performance. But here's the truth Machiavelli knew. The more you show, the more you owe. The world begins to expect. And when you fail to meet those expectations, it doesn't forget. Visibility creates a debt that performance must constantly repay. Silence creates space to move freely, without owing anyone a show. This isn't just theory, it's psychology. People do not fear what they fully understand. They fear what they can't predict. When your actions are always on display, you become explainable. When your mind is constantly revealed, you become controllable. But when you remain quiet, calculating and calm, others are forced to guess. And in that guessing, they reveal more about themselves than you ever do. Machiavelli would see today's world of performative success and shake his head, not because he was against ambition, but because he knew how easily that ambition could be destroyed by premature exposure. He wrote, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. Understand what that means." He didn't glorify betrayal. He accepted reality. Your past statements become chains. Your public declarations trap you in old versions of yourself. And once the world expects you to be a certain way, deviation looks like weakness. Silence, however, is freedom. It is your right to pivot, to evolve, to adapt without apology. Those who master power, master restraint. Imagine two warriors. One walks into the arena and proclaims his victory before the fight begins. The crowd cheers. He raises his sword, confident. The other walks in silently. He meets his opponent's eyes, says nothing, moves like a shadow. Which one would you fear more? We don't fear the loud, we fear the unknown, and that's the lesson the modern man must remember. When you show off your money, your body, your relationship, your plans, you think you are winning, you think you are intimidating. In truth, you are revealing targets. You're inviting envy, resistance, sabotage, and worse, you're training yourself to need external validation. Machiavelli warned us, it is much safer to be feared than loved, when one of the two must be lacking. And fear, true fear, requires distance, mystery, not bravado. The need to be admired is the seed of self-destruction, because once your self-worth is tied to what others see, you become a slave to their perception. You start tailoring your actions to applause. You chase optics, not outcomes, and power slips away. So what's the alternative? Become unreadable. Move in silence. Execute without announcement. Fear only when words add weight. Let results, not declarations, speak. This is not cowardice. It is control. Control over your narrative. Control over your opponent's understanding. Control over your destiny. Machiavelli didn't advise people to hide out of fear. He advised them to reveal only what served their ends. To understand that influence is not about being seen. It's about being felt. Quietly, powerfully, unforgettably. So the next time you feel the urge to share your plans, to prove your worth, to flaunt your edge, pause, ask yourself, who benefits from this display? You or the ones now preparing to use it against you? Remember, the strongest forces in the world are unseen. Gravity, time, pressure. They shape mountains without sound. Be like them. Be still. Be sharp. be silent. When a man speaks before he moves, he gives his enemies time to prepare. He gives his rivals something to study. He becomes a map, visible, traceable, predictable, and once you are predictable, you are no longer powerful. You are manageable. Machiavelli understood this intimately. His writings weren't just political. They were psychological blueprints. He knew that power begins not with domination, but with control. Not of others, but of yourself. And at the heart of that control lies one critical skill: knowing when to withhold. Why do people show off? Because they want certainty. They want admiration. They want proof that they are worth something. But the Machiavellian mind doesn't seek validation. It seeks leverage, and nothing gives you more leverage than silence. Not passive silence, not fearful silence, but chosen silence. Controlled, calculated, dangerous. There is a pattern that reveals itself across all levels of power. The higher someone rises, the less they speak. The more weight their words carry, the less often those words are used. And when they do speak, people listen. Not because of what is said, but because of what was held back. The beginner explains everything. The master explains nothing. He doesn't need to. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said, "It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles." The power of the man precedes his position, and that power is built through restraint. Not just in words, but in behavior, in expression, in emotional reaction. Show-offs are easy to provoke. They rise to bait. They take criticism personally. They react loudly and visibly, giving others exactly what they need to tear them down. But the Machiavellian operator doesn't flinch. He doesn't explain. He doesn't try to win the argument, because he's not playing for applause. He's playing for position. Think of the most influential people you know, the ones who truly shape outcomes. Are they the ones shouting the loudest in rooms, or are they the ones whose silence makes people nervous? This is the power of strategic invisibility. When you're loud, people track you. When you're quiet, people imagine you, and what they imagine is almost always more powerful than what is real. Visibility limits you. Imagination magnifies you. This is why kings once sat behind veils, why emperors were seen only in ceremony. Not because they feared their subjects, but because they understood perception. Once you are common, you are no longer compelling. Modern man violates this principle every day. We live in an age where people willingly leak their own weaknesses for attention, where we reward overexposure, where privacy is mistaken for guilt, and subtlety is misread as absence. This is why the average man cannot command respect, because he does not understand the value of mystery. Machiavelli warned us, centuries ago, men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. In other words, what they see matters more than what you actually do. So if you show too much, if you reveal the entire process, the effort, the hesitation, the frustration, you diminish the finished result. The magician who explains his trick loses his audience. Understand this. Your achievements do not speak louder when you broadcast them. They speak softer, because every word you use to justify yourself weakens the impact of what you've done. Every detail you reveal gives your enemies a chance to dissect it. And every boast you make shifts attention from your results to your ego. The disciplined man, the Machiavellian man, he doesn't announce his victories. He multiplies them in silence. He lets others interpret, speculate, wonder, because the more they wonder, the more they respect. And the more they respect, the more power he holds, without ever needing to demand it. This isn't about being invisible. It's about being strategic in how you are seen. There are moments to step into the light, but those moments must be chosen, not craved. They must be rare, deliberate, and loaded with intent. A lion doesn't roar all day. He waits, he studies, and when the roar comes, it means something. The problem with showing off isn't just that it weakens you, it's that it changes you. Slowly, imperceptibly, you begin to perform instead of act. You begin to chase applause instead of results. You start dressing for reaction instead of purpose. And eventually you become a caricature of what once made you dangerous. This is the trap of the showman. The moment he becomes addicted to his audience, he becomes their slave. Machiavelli would see this clearly. He would tell you, don't play to the crowd. Play above them. Let them talk, let them wonder, but never let them fully see. Because when you are seen too clearly, you are no longer respected. You are measured, compared, diminished. Mystique is the shadow of real power. Lose the mystique and you lose your edge. So how do you build that mystique? You remove the need to prove. You replace display with discipline. You begin to act without explaining. You begin to win without celebrating. You say less, but mean more. And in doing so, you force the world to come to you, not because you shouted, but because they noticed what wasn't being said. That's the quiet war Machiavelli fought in every sentence he wrote. Not for noise, but for control. Not for fame, but for influence. And in a time when every man is told to speak, when every app, every platform, every post demands attention, those who master silence become gods among noise. The strong man is not the one who demands your attention. He's the one who doesn't need it. The greatest advantage a man can possess in a world addicted to noise is the ability to remain silent and let others expose themselves. In the court of power, every boast, every overshare, every impulsive explanation is a reveal of weakness, a reveal of insecurity, a reveal of lack. Machiavelli knew this. He saw it in the fall of princes, in the betrayal of allies, in the missteps of those who mistook attention for strength. They thought their performance was persuasion. They thought their noise was dominance, but in the end, they were outmaneuvered by men who said less, watched more, and moved only when the moment served them. To understand this, you must first kill the illusion that being understood is always valuable. It's not. In fact, it's often the opposite. The moment people fully understand you is the moment they stop fearing you. They stop respecting you. They start calculating how to surpass you. Machiavelli didn't write for people who wanted to be liked. He wrote for those who wanted to last. And to last, you must make yourself ungraspable. He wrote, "A prudent man should always follow in the path trodden by great men and imitate those who have been supreme." And what did those great men have in common? They knew the value of concealment. Caesar, who crossed the Rubicon in silence. Borgia, who made no declarations until his enemies were already cornered. Even Machiavelli himself, who embedded his deepest lessons in allegory, in implication, never in loud instruction. The world has always punished those who reveal too much. But never more so than today, in our time. The surveillance isn't just governmental, it's social, it's self-inflicted. People volunteer their secrets. They post their vulnerabilities. They document every win, every loss, every passing emotion, believing that doing so gives them power. It does not. It gives power to others, to watch, to compare, to judge, to attack. You cannot control what you've already released. Machiavelli would urge you to build what he called fortresses of the mind. Places where your true intentions are known only to you, where your ambitions are not shared, they are executed, where your process remains invisible until the product is undeniable. Those who build in silence build stronger. There is a reason architects do not show unfinished blueprints to critics. There is a reason generals do not explain their battle plans on the eve of war. There is a reason kings do not ask the crowd for approval before they act. Because in power, anticipation is more valuable than exposure. The unknown is leverage. The silent room holds more tension than the loud one. The unsaid shapes behavior more than any speech. The Machiavellian doesn't just control others. He controls what others are allowed to know. This is where the ordinary man fails. He feels tension and rushes to relieve it. He feels doubt and speaks to cover it. He feels triumph and cannot help but scream. And in doing so, he teaches the world how to read him. He gives away the code. But the dangerous man, the man who wins, he resists that urge. He learns to hold, to sit in discomfort, to resist applause, to speak only when silence no longer serves. This is not the silence of submission. This is the silence of control. There's a difference between being quiet and being unreadable. A man who is merely quiet is passive, but a man who is unreadable is active. He is shaping perception by withholding just enough to make people wonder. That wondering becomes power. People begin to fill in the blanks with their own fears, their own hopes, their own insecurities. You become a mirror, and that mirror distorts their judgment in your favor. Look at any powerful figure in history. They understood this game. Churchill spoke sparingly, but each word landed like thunder. Marcus Aurelius wrote more for himself than for others, his thoughts private, his discipline internal. Even modern CEOs, the ones who truly lead, speak less in meetings than they listen. They are not performers. They are players, strategic players. Machiavelli saw through all illusions. He knew that charisma fades, that applause dies, that fame is a fragile shield. But a strong mind, concealed, composed, unreadable, that is unbreakable. So ask yourself, in a world where everyone is performing, what happens when you don't? What happens when you refuse to explain yourself? When you decline to show your process? When you stop advertising your every move? You gain space. You gain clarity. You gain control. Others begin to talk about you instead of to you. They speculate. They react. They project. And while they do that, you move. Quietly. With force. Without needing permission. That is how empires are built. Not with noise, but with moves that cannot be anticipated. Not with validation, but with vision that is not diluted by the crowd's gaze. Machiavelli would say, to rule without resistance, you must first remove the need to be seen. Let the crowd chase attention. Let them overexpose. Let them burn themselves in the spotlight. You remain in the shadows, not as a coward but as the architect of a power they will only recognize once it's too late. And when they do, they won't know how you got there, because you never showed your hand. You didn't shout. You didn't flex. You didn't compete for their attention. You just moved. There's a law of nature that most men forget. The loudest animal is rarely the deadliest. The wolf does not bark before it bites. The serpent does not announce its strike. And the storm does not explain. It arrives. Suddenly, without apology. Machiavelli understood this truth. In every line he wrote, in every ruler he studied, in every betrayal he chronicled, one theme echoes louder than any declaration. Silence used strategically is more lethal than any speech. And its opposite, display, boasting, theatrical self-exposure, is a fatal flaw in any man who seeks to rise. Yet today, we are surrounded by noise, status updates, motivational slogans, behind-the-scenes vlogs, minute-by-minute personal brands. Modern life is a theater of exposure, but what most don't realize is that performance is not power. In fact, it is often the substitute for it. Those who have true power have no need to prove it, because the moment you try to prove something, you admit that it's in question. Why is showing off the worst thing you can do? Because it invites reaction. It tells the world where to aim. It exposes your position before you've secured the ground, and in Machiavellian terms, this is nothing short of strategic malpractice. He once wrote, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." What does the fool do? He reveals himself. He demands to be seen. He insists on being recognized, and in doing so, he hands his enemies the very information they need to destroy him. The wise man, however, acts quietly, precisely, and only later, if ever, does the world learn what he has done. Let's be clear, this is not about being timid. This is not the silence of fear. This is the silence of supremacy. A silence so solid that it cannot be rattled by opinion, trend, or insult. Because the man who shows off has already lost the game. He has turned inward power into outward validation. He needs others to confirm his worth, his vision, his strength. And once that need exists, it can be manipulated. What's more, showing off puts you on a schedule that does not serve you. You are no longer free to move when it is optimal. You move when others are watching. You're no longer operating in real strategy. You're performing for response. And the most dangerous part, you begin to confuse reaction with result. This is how great plans die, not by opposition, but by attention. The idea is shared too early. The strategy is leaked for praise. The goal is announced and judged before it's formed. In Machiavellian politics, that's called premature commitment, and it's a death sentence. You may think that confidence is shown through volume, but Machiavelli would disagree. True confidence is silent. It moves with such precision that it doesn't ask for trust. It demands respect. Consider how this applies to leadership. The loud leader, the one who speaks in excess, who justifies every move, who responds to every criticism, appears accessible, but not powerful. The quiet leader, the one who listens more than he talks, who withholds more than he shares, commands a different kind of authority. His words weigh more, because he speaks less. And that's not coincidence. That's design. Silence increases perceived value. Every unnecessary word dilutes that value. The man who constantly explains himself lowers his price. The man who withholds, who lets mystery do the talking, raises it. The same applies in negotiation. The first person to speak always loses ground. The more you reveal, the more you concede. But if you can sit in the tension, if you can hold the silence, others will reveal themselves. They will fill the space. They will show you their weaknesses while guessing at yours. Machiavelli didn't just teach politics. He taught human natures. He knew that people are uncomfortable with what they don't understand, and that discomfort leads them to speak, to react, to show their hand. All you need to do is remain still, and they will destroy themselves in the effort to decode you. So ask yourself, when you post your goals, when you brag about your moves, when you reveal your relationships, your income, your plans, who are you doing it for? Is it for progress or for praise? Is it for control or for comfort? Because the man who needs to be seen will always be controlled by the gaze of others. But the man who sees everything while revealing nothing, he becomes untouchable. This is the reason Machiavellian silence is so rare, because it demands discipline. It demands that you become immune to the need for reaction, that you find power not in being known but in being unknowable. The unknown is feared, the predictable is managed. Choose who you want to be. And remember, power is not just what you do, it's what you allow others to think you might do. And if they don't know what that is, if they can't predict, prepare or explain you, they will hesitate. And that hesitation is the space in which you win. It's not the showman who becomes king, it's the shadow figure, the one who appears only when the move is already made, the one who is 10 steps ahead, but says nothing until it's over. Machiavelli would not tell you to be invisible. He would tell you to be deliberate, to make them think you're playing checkers when you're playing chess, to smile while holding a blade, to nod while keeping score, and to speak only when your silence has finished its work. This is the power of not showing off. This is the power of presence, without performance. Say nothing, watch everything, and move only when it serves the win. If there is one thread that runs through every fall from power, every collapse of influence, every dethroned king and defeated general, it is this: they were seen too clearly, too early, by too many. Machiavelli understood that power, like gold, loses value when too much is in circulation. The man who constantly puts himself on display, who broadcasts every move, every ambition, every achievement, floods the market with himself. And once you are everywhere, you are no longer valuable. You are common. You are background noise. You cannot be both revered and familiar. Machiavelli warned that rulers must learn how not to be good. But he also meant something subtler, how not to be accessible. The sovereign must be known by his results, not by his explanations. He must be felt, not followed. His presence must weigh on the room even when he's absent, and that presence cannot be built by speaking louder. It is built by speaking less. by making every appearance count. The moment you begin chasing visibility, you surrender the one thing that cannot be replaced: mystique. Mystique is not the product of hiding. It is the product of restraint, of discipline, of showing only what serves your objective and nothing more. It is power preserved through precision. Look at the way great actors use silence on stage. A glance, a pause, a breath held too long. It says more than a monologue ever could. The same is true in life. The person who speaks after a silence controls the tempo. The one who listens longer understands deeper, and the one who holds back gains leverage while others deplete theirs. This is not a tactic, it's a worldview. In Machiavelli's world, every interaction is a contest of control, and in that contest, noise is a liability, emotion is a liability. The desire to be admired is the worst liability of all, because once you require praise, you become addicted to performance, and performance is not power. It is a distraction from it. The man who rises in silence is not just more effective, he is more dangerous because nobody sees him coming. He is the silent architect, the one who builds without announcing, the one who studies his enemies while they advertise their strategies, the one who waits until every piece is in place, then strikes with such precision that people call it genius. But it was never genius. It was patience, silence, control, and that kind of control terrifies people, because they can't prepare for what they can't predict. They can't resist what they can't see. They can't retaliate against a force they don't fully understand. This is the psychology of fear, and Machiavelli understood it with brutal clarity. He wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved. But love is given. Fear is crafted, and one of its key ingredients is uncertainty. When people don't know what you'll do next, they brace themselves. When they're unsure how you think, they don't challenge you. When they feel something powerful behind your silence, they step back. They respect a distance they cannot cross." That's the paradox of modern communication. The more we share, the less we are respected, because sharing feels good. It feels intimate. It feels honest. But power is not about feeling good. It's about lasting. And to last, you must train yourself to hold when others release, to conceal when others confess, to act when others announce, and most importantly, to understand that not every truth deserves an audience. There is a difference between transparency and weakness. Machiavelli would say, "Show only what is useful, disclose only what builds your position, and never confuse openness with strength." Because while you're broadcasting your plans, someone else is watching, quietly, calculating how to use your truth against you. They will not announce themselves. They will not argue. They will wait. They will smile. And when your guard is down, when you're busy collecting likes, they will move. That is the cold beauty of real power. It is never loud. It is never rushed. It is never needy. So you must ask yourself, do you want recognition or do you want results? Because you can rarely have both. The man who is recognized too early becomes a symbol, and symbols are targets. The man who builds too loudly invites sabotage. The man who needs applause will compromise his tactics to keep it. But the man who is content to go unseen, unpraised, unnoticed, he becomes something else entirely. He becomes a shadow that moves behind the headlines, a force that does not depend on exposure to dominate. Machiavelli did not crave fame. He understood it. He manipulated it, but he never believed in it as a goal, because he knew fame is a trap. It forces you to maintain a version of yourself that others admire, even if it costs you everything that made you powerful in the first place. The world will tell you to be visible, to be loud, to be undeniable. But the master knows the more you are seen, the more you are scrutinized, and the more you are scrutinized, the easier it is to be dismantled. So be careful what you reveal. Be careful what you show off, because the man who is addicted to display may win the crowd, but he will never control the game. And the Machiavelli never wrote for the crowd. He wrote for the player, the ruler, the quiet strategist, who knows the deepest truth of all. Power is not what people see. Power is what people can't see and fear anyway. What makes a man powerful is not how loudly he speaks, but how carefully he listens. Not how much he reveals, but how much he withholds. Not the applause he gathers, but the moves he makes when no one is watching. Machiavelli saw it in courts and councils, on battlefields and in backrooms. The ones who lasted, the ones who ruled, were not the ones who performed. They were the ones who planned, in silence, in shadows, without needing recognition to validate their position. And that is the final warning he offers to anyone who wishes to win. Showing off is not just a mistake. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of how power operates. The crowd cheers for the man who shines, but the one who endures, the one who truly holds influence, is the man who understands that every moment of visibility comes at a price. What is that price? Exposure, vulnerability, predictability. And for the Machiavellian mind, those are debts you never take on unless the payoff is guaranteed. Today, most people live in the open. They broadcast every emotion, every opinion, every ambition. But exposure is not strength. It is surrender. You show them your goals, they'll mock them. You show them your process, they'll steal it. You show them your wealth, they'll scheme against it. Every time you reveal something, no matter how small, you invite judgment, envy, resistance. But when you stay quiet, when you stay unreadable, you hold the advantage. Because no one can attack what they cannot define. No one can block a move they don't see coming. No one can destroy what is hidden. That is not weakness. That is design. The world tells you to be transparent. Machiavelli tells you to be selective. The world tells you to be authentic. Machiavelli tells you to be strategic. The world tells you to be admired. Machiavelli tells you to be feared when necessary and always respected. And that respect is not earned through grand displays or emotional speeches. It is earned through consistency, restraint and force, used only when it serves a purpose. Invisibility is not your enemy. Indifference is, and no one ignores what they don't understand. But they often dismiss what is too familiar. So let them wonder, let them guess, let them think they know you while you quietly redefine who you are, where you're going, and what you'll become. Machiavelli taught that the prince must sometimes appear virtuous without being so. That perception is a tool, not a mirror. You do not owe the world a full version of yourself. You owe the world results. And results do not need decoration. They do not need explanation. They speak louder than your mouth ever could. This is the lesson for those who want to build something lasting. Move in silence. Build in silence. Win in silence. When you speak, let it be rare. Let it be intentional. Let it carry the weight of all you chose not to say. That's what gives a voice power. Not its volume, but its scarcity. The man who shows off today may impress a room. The man who stays silent will shape the world. Understand this. Legacy is not created by noise. It is created by motion. Quiet, deliberate, unstoppable. The kings of history were not crowned by the crowd. They were crowned by their ability to rule without needing to be seen, to make decisions that shaped futures without ever explaining themselves to those who would not understand. You don't need to be famous. You don't need to be followed. You don't need to be praised. You need to be effective. And effectiveness begins where the need for attention ends. So walk away from the spotlight. Withdraw your need to prove. Master your tongue. Temper your pride. And focus your mind on what matters. Not the image, not the impression, but the impact. When your silence is louder than their noise, you've won. When your actions echo through rooms you never entered, you've won. When they realize they've been playing your game without ever hearing your rules, you've won. That's the final rule. That's the quiet victory. And that's what Machiavelli tried to tell you before the noise drowned him out. If you've listened this far, it means something in you is already shifting. A part of you is tired of the noise, tired of explaining, tired of needing permission to be powerful. And now, something deeper is waking up. You've realized that being admired means nothing if it requires you to become predictable. That true respect begins when you no longer negotiate your presence to fit their expectations. So now I ask you, are you ready to be doubted, misunderstood, even resented, because you chose strategy over spectacle? Are you willing to walk the silent path knowing it's colder, lonelier, but far more dangerous? If this message spoke to you, if something in you clicked, write in the comments, I move in silence. Let's see how many of you are done performing. How many of you are ready to stop showing off and start winning? And don't stop here. Watch the next video. It's not just content, it's preparation. Preparation for a world that doesn't reward the loud but the lethal. I'll see you there. One of the most dangerous traps a man can fall into is the desire to be liked. We are taught from birth to pursue approval, from parents, from teachers, from friends, from strangers online. We're conditioned to believe that being agreeable is a virtue, that likability is power, that if we are just nice enough, just soft enough, just flexible enough, the world will reward us. But I will tell you this plainly, the man who needs to be liked is the easiest man to control. The moment your sense of worth depends on the applause of others, you've placed your power into their hands, and those hands are not steady. They tremble with envy, with insecurity, with shifting trends and false morality. A man who bends to please them becomes a man who stands for nothing. Machiavelli once said, "It is better to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both." Not because fear is cruelty, but because love is fickle, conditional. It changes with mood, with rumor, with gossip. One day they cheer for you, the next they burn you alive. Look at history. The powerful are rarely adored. They are respected, they are obeyed, they are remembered, but rarely are they liked. Caesar was not liked. He was feared, respected. He walked into Rome, not with the smiles of the Senate, but with the legions behind him. Napoleon was not liked, but he reshaped Europe. Alexander was not liked. He conquered. They whispered about him, doubted him, and then they bowed. You think your social circle is different, that your office, your online followers, your so-called friends are immune to the currents of perception and power. Then you've already lost, because here's the truth. They like you when you're small, harmless, familiar. The moment you rise, they look for flaws. The moment you stand firm, they call you arrogant. The moment you win, they resent you. Because deep down, most people don't want you to be powerful. They want you to be likable, which means they want you manageable. A man addicted to likability will betray his own judgment just to keep the peace. He will avoid hard truths, soften his opinions, laugh at things he finds foolish, compliment what he does not admire, nod in agreement when he should stand in defiance. He becomes clay in the hands of louder voices, and louder voices are not always wiser ones. Let me be clear, I'm not speaking of cruelty, nor of mindless aggression. This is not an invitation to be rude, brutish, or dismissive. That is weakness parading as strength. What I'm saying is this: your compass must be internal, grounded, rooted in principle, not popularity. You must be willing to disappoint people. You must be willing to be misunderstood. You must be willing to carry the label of unlikable if it means you remain in control of your values, your actions, your path. Because the moment your actions are guided by the fear of being disliked, you're no longer the author of your story. You're an actor in theirs, and those who try to please everyone end up respected by no one. Let me ask you this: what do you gain by being liked by all? Do you think they'll protect you when things go wrong? Do you think they'll reward you when you've exhausted yourself trying to keep them happy? No. They will move on to the next agreeable man, the next smiling puppet, and you will be left hollow, burnt out, bitter. Understand this: influence is not earned through smiles, it's earned through results, through clarity, through boldness. You do not become formidable by being friendly. You become formidable by being undeniable. In the court of public opinion, the crowd does not admire the man who fits in. They admire the man who stands apart, who does not flinch, who speaks when others hesitate, who walks alone when others cling to consensus. That man is not always liked, but he is always watched. And that, my friend, is power. They say likability opens doors. I say it opens cages. The cage of needing permission, the cage of needing validation, the cage of never offending, never asserting, never daring. What if you stepped outside that cage? What if, just for a moment, you stopped asking, "Do they like me?" and started asking, "Do they respect me?" Respect lasts, likability fades. Respect builds nations. Likability builds dependencies. Respect is earned by action. Likability is often granted for nothing. You must choose, and if you are to build anything in this world, an empire, a business, a legacy, choose respect, choose clarity, choose strength, wrapped in silence, over popularity wrapped in performance, because in the end, it is not the man who is liked that changes the world. It is the man who is heard, even when his voice disrupts comfort. It is the man who is followed, even when his path is steep. It is the man who is remembered, even when his name was once whispered in discomfort. They will try to convince you otherwise. They will say, "But the world needs more kindness. Don't be so cold. You'll be alone if you act like that." These are not warnings, they are manipulations, spoken not for your growth, but for their comfort. You see, when you stop needing to be liked, you become unpredictable. And unpredictable men cannot be easily used. This is why they fear you. This is why they call you difficult, arrogant, too intense, because your silence is louder than their noise. Your presence interrupts their illusions. Machiavelli understood this well. He did not write for the masses. He wrote for rulers, for those who would one day be forced to make decisions that would anger the crowd but preserve the state. A wise prince, he said, must learn how not to be good, not because goodness has no value, but because goodness, when unguarded, becomes a weakness, and likability, unchecked, becomes a trap disguised as virtue. You cannot lead while trying to please. You cannot command while craving approval. You cannot protect what matters if you need applause to act, because those who demand your likability do not care about your strength. They care about your submission. They will always prefer the man who smiles and obeys over the one who speaks and resists. They will flatter you as long as you stay in your place. But the moment you step out of line, they will remind you how unlikable you've become. And if you fear that word unlikable, you'll retreat, you'll apologize, you'll soften, you'll return to the cage. But if you understand the game, you won't flinch. You'll hear the insult and smile, not with arrogance, but with clarity, because now you understand what they fear, not your cruelty, not your success, but your independence. A man who does not crave to be liked cannot be bribed with praise. He cannot be silenced with ridicule. He cannot be manipulated by guilt. And in this modern world where emotional leverage is the currency of the weak, that is a terrifying kind of power. Let's speak plainly. Every environment has its politics, offices, families, friend groups, social media circles. Every group has a center of gravity, an expectation of behavior. Play nice, don't disagree too strongly. Don't say what you really think. Nod, smile, blend in. The man who breaks that rhythm, who speaks sharply, who moves deliberately, who chooses not to flatter, he becomes a threat. Not because he's dangerous in action, but because he reminds others of their own cowardice. He mirrors back their compliance. And people will hate you for that. They will try to isolate you. They will say, "He thinks he's better than us. Who does he think he is?" Let them speak. Let them whisper. Let them throw stones at the fortress they cannot enter. You must become immune to their hunger for your submission, because likability is not strength, it's camouflage, and camouflage is useful only when you're hunting, not when you're leading. So let's go deeper. Ask yourself, why do you need to be liked? Where did that desire begin? Was it when you were a child and learned that being agreeable got you praise? Was it when you were told that keeping the peace was noble? That being too bold made you rude? That disagreeing made you difficult? Good. Now take all of that, lay it out, and burn it, because the truth is this. The more you evolve, the fewer people will like you. Not because you've grown worse, but because you've stopped shrinking. The man who shrinks to fit others is never hated. He is tolerated. But the man who grows to his full height, he will be too much for many. And that is how it should be. You are not here to be digestible. You are here to be undeniable. Your role is not to decorate the room with pleasant words. It is to shake the walls with inconvenient truths. If you must choose between making people comfortable and making them think, choose thought. If you must choose between earning their affection and earning their respect, choose respect. If you must choose between blending in and standing alone, stand alone. Because when the storm comes, it is not the likable man they will follow. It is the one they trust to face the wind. Machiavelli wrote, "A prince who is always trying to be good will come to ruin among the great number who are not good." Understand what that means. The world is not made of saints, it is made of forces, and if you are to wield any influence in this life, you must become a force, not a decoration. So the next time you feel the need to be liked, stop, breathe, and ask, is this alignment or is this appeasement? Is this kindness or is this cowardice? Is this diplomacy or is this fear? Because the man who cannot answer those questions truthfully will always remain a servant in the court of public opinion. But the man who dares to answer them and live accordingly, he becomes something else entirely. He becomes unshakable. There's a subtle shift that happens when you stop trying to be liked. You begin to see clearly, the fog lifts, the masks fall away. Conversations that once felt warm now reveal their manipulation. Invitations begin to feel like tests. Compliments start to sound like currency. You begin to see the game behind the smile, the motive behind the praise, the fear behind the friendliness. Because the world doesn't know what to do with a man who doesn't need validation. He is foreign to them, alien, uncontrollable, and that makes him powerful. Understand this. When you no longer depend on the approval of others, you gain the rarest form of freedom, psychological sovereignty. You are no longer held hostage by their applause, nor paralyzed by their criticism. You move as you see fit, and that terrifies them. Why? Because most people live in chains. Chains built from compliments and likes and agreeable nods. Chains polished to look like kindness, but chains nonetheless. And when a man walks in unchained, he reminds them of their own bondage, so they will mock you, question you, distance themselves. They will say you've changed, as if that's a crime. They will say you've become cold, as if clarity is cruelty. But what they truly mean is this: you no longer make us comfortable. And that is your first sign of liberation. Machiavelli would remind us that the crowd is not driven by reason, it is driven by perception, appearances, signals. So if you signal neediness, if you signal desperation to belong, you give them a lever to pull. You become manageable, predictable, manipulable. But if you signal calm detachment, silent confidence, a quiet certainty in your own direction, then they hesitate, then they whisper, then they watch. Because the man who moves without needing permission creates his own gravitational pull. Let me ask you a simple question. When was the last time you said exactly what you thought, without softening it, without checking their reaction, without apologizing for it? Most cannot answer, because we've been trained to edit ourselves mid-sentence, to dilute our truth before it offends, to coat our convictions in sugar before anyone tastes them. That's not diplomacy, that's fear, wearing a mask, and fear is the enemy of strategy. Now consider this. Why do people follow strong leaders, even when they're not liked? Because we trust clarity more than charm. We trust conviction more than courtesy. We follow decisiveness, even when it's uncomfortable, because the alternative is chaos. Machiavelli saw this in his time. He wrote, "Men in general judge more by the sense of sight than by the sense of touch. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. Appearances matter. But what appearance do you craft? One of the agreeable, harmless friend? Or one of the composed, dangerous thinker? The second is feared, respected, often misunderstood, but never ignored. Let them call you intimidating. That means you've broken their ability to predict you. Let them say you're too intense. That means you've refused to dull your edge. Let them accuse you of arrogance. That means you've stopped asking for their permission to exist. Because make no mistake, there is a cost to likability. It's just paid slowly, over time, 1,000 small silences, 1,000 quiet nods, 1,000 truths swallowed before they offended, and then one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize the man staring back. He smiles too much, he apologizes too quickly, he doubts too often. That is the death of authority. Not in the eyes of others, but in your own. You can't lead if you don't trust your voice. You can't protect if you're afraid to offend. You can't dominate if you hesitate every time the room gets uncomfortable. You must relearn how to speak without the need for reaction, how to act without the need for applause, how to exist without bending for affection. This is not detachment from others, this is loyalty to self, and the more you practice this, the more magnetic you become, not because you try to be, but because people are drawn to what they cannot sway. The man who cannot be moved by flattery or fear becomes an anchor in a storm. People crave that, even if they don't know how to say it, even if they pretend to hate it, even if they never admit it out loud. They crave the man who says little but means everything, who is silent when others shout, who does not chase the crowd but makes the crowd adjust to his pace. That is who you must become, not liked but centered, not praised but powerful. There comes a moment in every man's life where he must choose comfort or clarity. Comfort tells you to fit in, to make peace, to smile even when your instinct screams otherwise, to water yourself down until you are palatable enough for the weak to swallow. But clarity Clarity is ruthless. Clarity whispers, you were not born to be a decoration. You were not born to tiptoe around small minds. You were not born to please people who secretly envy your potential. You were not born to live under the mercy of others' moods. Machiavelli taught that the vulgar crowd is always taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar. He did not mean this as an insult. He meant it as a warning, a truth. The crowd does not want your truth. They want your compliance. They want your smile, your silence, your mask. They want you to play the part they have written for you. Break the script and they will turn on you. But let them turn and reveal what they truly are, dependent on your agreement, addicted to your applause, threatened by your independence. This is the paradox of strength. The more solid you become, the more alone you may feel, not because no one wants you, but because most do not know how to hold something that doesn't bend. They are used to the soft, the agreeable, the ever-smiling servant. And then you arrive, silent, deliberate, unmoved, and suddenly the room changes temperature. This is not arrogance. This is control. You are not cold. You are composed. You are not rude. You are rooted. You are not heartless. You are disciplined. But to those who live off chaos, your discipline will feel like distance. Your silence will feel like judgment. Your direction will feel like danger. Let it. Let them feel whatever they must feel. You are not responsible for their interpretations. You are responsible for your integrity. This is where most men falter. They begin the path of self-mastery and then recoil when others pull away. They confuse solitude with failure. They see a friend turn silent and they doubt themselves. But hear me now, your solitude is not a sign of weakness. It is the birthplace of your voice. You must sit with yourself, unapplauded, unseen, unliked, and still remain anchored. Because if you cannot hold yourself in silence, you will beg for attention in noise. And attention, my friend, is the cheapest currency a man can chase. You think you want followers. What you really need is direction. You think you want approval. What you really crave is alignment. You think you want to be understood, but what you really need is to be unshaken. The man who tries to be liked by everyone becomes a slave to everyone's version of him, and eventually those versions collide. Who do you become then? The polite mask for the crowd? The diluted dream for the family? The smiling shadow at work? No, you become no one. You vanish into fragments, and power does not live in fragments. Power lives in unity, when your thoughts, your actions, your presence, and your principles move as one. This is why likability is a mirage. It lures you with comfort, then dissolves your identity, and when the storm comes, the likable man is the first to fall, because his roots were never planted in himself. But the feared man, the respected man, the silent one who speaks only when it matters, he survives, he guides, he remains. So what now? You drop the addiction, cold, you stop performing, you stop apologizing for your tone, you stop reshaping your truth to keep the peace, and you begin speaking from the center, not the surface. You begin walking with weight, not for display, but for direction. You begin mastering the art of no. No, I will not flatter you. No, I will not pretend. No, I will not chase your approval. And in that no, you say yes to yourself, yes to your path, yes to your standard, yes to your power. Machiavelli would not have wasted a breath trying to be liked. He would have studied the room, observed the minds, identified the threats, and acted coldly, strategically, without noise, not to provoke, but to win. Likability is not a strategy, it's a sedative, and too many men have been lulled to sleep, chasing applause while their empires crumble behind them. Let that not be you. There's a calm that settles in once you stop chasing favor, a shift in posture, a silence in your step. You walk slower, but with more weight. You speak less, but each word lands like stone. This is the man they cannot understand, not because he is mysterious, but because he is not needy. And in a world trained to beg for affection, the man who does not beg becomes a mystery, a myth, a threat. He is not cruel, he is not loud, he simply does not flinch. Machiavelli understood that a ruler does not rise by consensus. He rises by clarity, by conviction, by the ability to decide without waiting for applause. The crowd can cheer you today and crucify you tomorrow. That is their nature, so if you live by their praise, you will die by their silence. Look at the men who built legacies, not followers. They were not the most agreeable, they were not the most charming, they were not the easiest to be around. They were exacting, precise, unyielding, and because of that, they were trusted in chaos. Because in the end, it is not comfort that protects a kingdom, it is steel. Let's talk tactics. When you walk into a room, do not seek to be liked, seek to be remembered, not for your charm, but for your presence, not for your jokes, but for your precision. Not for how agreeable you are, but for how little you need agreement. Be the man whose silence makes others uneasy. Be the man who does not fill space to be noticed, but whose restraint makes others speak more than they should. Because the man who listens more than he talks always walks away with leverage. Likability burns fast, but mystery lingers, and in that mystery lies control. Consider this. When you are liked, they invite you. When you are respected, they consult you. But when you are feared, they adjust to you. That is the progression. The man who craves invitations will never be the man they rearrange the room for. You must become the latter. And you do that by refusing to bend your tone, your values, your intensity, just to be received gently. Not everyone will receive you well. That is not your burden. The oak does not apologize to the breeze, it simply remains. And those who are weak will call it stubborn, but the strong will call it shelter. Stop asking if they're comfortable around you. Ask if you're true to your mission in their presence, because if you shrink in the presence of others, you are rehearsing weakness, and weakness is not neutral, it invites conquest. Machiavelli warned us, the man who lets himself be governed by his feelings lays himself open to every injury. This is what the need to be liked does. It exposes you, it makes you predictable, it blinds you to betrayal, because you cannot bear the idea that someone smiling at you might secretly wish to see you fall. But once you kill the need to be liked, you gain a new sense, call it inner vision. You begin to see motives behind manners. You begin to hear the gap between their words and their tone. You begin to feel the shift in energy before the betrayal arrives. And you do not panic, you do not confront, you simply adjust. Because the man who does not need to be liked does not react. He repositions, he re-aims, he remains in control. This is what makes him untouchable. He is not moved by rumor, not softened by flattery, not broken by social pressure. He is loyal only to what matters, his principles, his path and his power. And because of that, he becomes a force of nature, a storm with no need for thunder, a fire with no need for smoke, a presence that cannot be diluted by crowd or chaos. So let them say you've changed, you were meant to. Let them say you've hardened, you were meant to. Let them say you're too much, good. Too much for them is exactly enough for what you're building. Let them speak. Let them whisper in corners you no longer visit. Let them craft their narratives, stitch together their reasons for your distance, your silence, your evolution. Because a man who no longer needs to be liked cannot be reached by noise. He has outgrown it. He does not hate them. He simply no longer belongs to them. Machiavelli knew that leadership is not a popularity contest. It's a war of perception, a test of endurance, a game of anticipation. The prince who survives is not the one who is loved at all times, but the one who sees 10 steps ahead, who acts before the crowd even knows what it wants. And in your life, whether you rule kingdoms or simply your own time, that same truth applies. The man who rises is the one who stops asking for permission. So now you choose. You've heard the warnings, you've seen the trap, you've felt the pull of approval, the sweet poison of applause, and now you know where it leads, into the arms of mediocrity, into a life governed by other people's moods. You can return to that if you want. Smile when you don't mean it. Nod when you disagree. Stay silent to avoid the tension. Let them shape you, mold you, reward you with scraps of affection. But if you do, know this, they will never love the real you, because they've never met him. He's still buried beneath the man you pretend to be. Or, you can rise, you can step into discomfort. You can allow their disappointment to pass through you like wind through stone. You can begin to measure your day, not by how many people liked you, but by how deeply you stayed aligned with your mission. And yes, the world may resist at first. They always do when a man decides to become something more than polite. But eventually, they adjust, they recalibrate, because power bends the room, it bends perception, it bends legacy. The likable man is forgotten the moment he exits the room. But the grounded man, the unshaken man, the one who moved with calm, unapologetic strength, he is remembered not just for his words, but for his refusal to betray himself. You must understand that not everyone can walk with you, and they're not meant to. Some are here to test your commitment, to see if you'll fold, to see if their silence will make you beg, if their criticism will make you flinch. Let them test, let them doubt, let them leave. Your path was never built on their approval. It was built in silence, in early mornings, in lonely nights, in hard decisions made without applause, in the quiet promise you made to yourself that you would not live a life dictated by others, that you would not dim your light to make others feel comfortable in the dark. Machiavelli would tell you, the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. So look around, Do they challenge you or comfort you? Do they call you to rise or beg you to soften? Do they respect your presence or require your performance? If you find yourself surrounded by people who only like the version of you that serves them, leave, because your future cannot be built on an audience that applauds your silence and punishes your voice. You were not born to be manageable, you were born to be monumental. But that monument will not be built with smiles, it will be built with solitude, with precision, with unwavering conviction. So remember this, being liked is temporary, being respected is powerful, but being true, being ruthlessly, relentlessly, quietly true to your principles, your standards, your purpose, that is eternal. That is how legends are carved, not in applause, but in the echo of a man who needed nothing from the crowd and built everything in spite of them. So walk forward now, not with arrogance, but with silence, not to be seen, but to be felt, not to impress, but to endure. The world may not like you, but when you live like this, they will never forget you. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you is already shifting. A part of you no longer wants to be seen, just to be seen. A part of you is ready to be real, even if the world resists it. You've already realized being liked means nothing if it requires abandoning who you truly are. And true self-respect, true self-love, begins the moment you choose yourself, even if that choice costs you comfort, company, or understanding. So now, tell me in the comments, are you willing to be misunderstood, to be disliked, even hated for the sake of your inner clarity and freedom? Are you willing to walk alone if that's the only way to walk in truth? If this message pierced through the noise, if it resonated deeper than words, then write in the comments, I no longer chase approval. Let's see how many among us are ready to stop performing and start building a life based on strength, not applause. And don't stop here. The next video is crucial, more than you know. It's a continuation of this path. Watch it now. I'll see you there. What if everything you've been taught about hard work is a beautifully packaged lie? From the moment you're old enough to hold a pen or swing a tool, you're told to grind, to hustle, to sweat. That if you just work hard enough, long enough, you'll rise, you'll be rewarded, you'll be respected. But look around. The hardest workers are rarely the ones in power. They break their backs while others play chess with their futures. They sweat under the sun while someone in the shade signs the checks. The glorification of hard work is not a virtue, it is a control mechanism, because here is the truth you were never meant to hear. Working hard is not dangerous because it's ineffective, it's dangerous because it is obedient. Those who work the hardest are often those most easily used. They move in straight lines, predictable, visible, exhausted, and therefore harmless. You don't fear the man who's always tired. You don't watch the one who announces his grind. You ignore him because he's not playing the real game. Niccolo Machiavelli once warned that appearances often deceive and that those who seem virtuous are often the most cunning. But what if today's greatest deception is the cult of effort itself? In Renaissance Florence, the most powerful men were not the ones toiling on the streets. They were not the ones sweating over the forge or dying for their loyalty in the field. They were the ones who understood one timeless principle. Control is not earned by labor, it is acquired by leverage. A prince does not rule because he works harder than the peasant. He rules because he sees further, moves quieter, and thinks sharper. Strategy is not louder than labor, it is just less romantic. And so the poets never wrote about it. But the consequence is this: the masses worship the worker, while the elite engineer the conditions that make the worker necessary. Let me ask you something. Who benefits from a society that glorifies endless work? Who wins when you're too tired to think, too loyal to question, too invested in your own suffering to realize it was never your path to power? You were told to be proud of the grind, but pride is not power, and fatigue is not virtue. The man who never stops moving never notices he's walking in circles. Hard work becomes a treadmill dressed up as a staircase. It gives you the illusion of progress while keeping you exactly where you are, visible, compliant, and useful. And that's the danger, because the moment you confuse usefulness with power, you've already lost the game. A lion does not become king of the jungle by hunting every day. He becomes king because he chooses when to hunt, because his presence creates silence, because his restraint is more terrifying than another's aggression. The hard worker runs toward the problem. The strategist watches the battlefield and moves once, when the time is right, and wins with one strike. And yet, we hand out trophies for exhaustion. We worship burnout as if it were a badge of honor. We call sleep a weakness, rest a luxury, silence a flaw. But ask yourself, who planted that idea in your mind? Who gains when you never stop? When you always produce but never command? Hard work, unchecked, becomes a form of self-betrayal. It disguises itself as discipline, but often it is avoidance, a refusal to think deeper, to plan sharper, to demand more with less movement. There's a reason kings had advisors, not calluses. A reason the most feared men in history were not the loudest. They were the ones you never saw coming. They were the ones who moved once, not 1,000 times, who used others' movement as their advantage, who weaponized stillness like a blade. So when someone tells you to just work harder, understand that is not a strategy. That is a command designed for someone they do not see as a threat. Because the moment you become a threat, the moment you start thinking instead of just doing, is the moment they stop applauding your grind and start fearing your presence. There is a sickness among the ambitious, a hidden disease passed down like wisdom. It tells them that effort equals worth, that the man who suffers most is somehow more deserving, more noble, more real. But suffering, on its own, is not a credential. It is often the tax the unstrategic pay for their lack of clarity. And the world is filled with men who confuse being tired with being useful. They wear their exhaustion like armor. They believe that if they just outwork everyone, eventually the throne will be handed to them. But thrones are not awarded for effort. They are taken through insight, manipulation, and perfect timing. The man who works 10 times harder often serves the one who thinks 10 times sharper. Think of the gladiator. He sweats, he bleeds, he fights with everything he has. The crowd cheers. But who truly holds power in the arena? Not the man dying for applause, the emperor, the one watching, deciding, judging. With a single gesture, he determines life or death. He lifts his thumb and rewrites the future. Not through labor, but through leverage. Hard work without strategy is gladiator blood, dramatic, respected, but ultimately disposable. And yet society conditions you to believe that to be noble is to suffer, that your worth is measured by your willingness to endure thankless hours, that rest is weakness and silence is laziness. But hear this clearly, the most powerful men are not the busiest, they are the most deliberate. They don't run faster, they remove friction. They don't compete harder, they change the rules. A Machiavellian mind does not ask, how can I do more? It asks, how can I make less feel like more to everyone watching? This is the difference between the man climbing the ladder and the man who built the ladder and sold it to him. The worker seeks validation. The strategist engineers perception. The worker waits to be chosen. The strategist removes the illusion of choice entirely. So why are we told to worship effort? Why are we seduced by the image of the selfless man, the grinder, the one who never stops? Because he is safe. The man who grinds endlessly has no time to study the game. He is too busy to ask real questions, too tired to challenge the system that keeps him spinning. He becomes a cog. Honorable maybe, but still a cog. And cogs are replaceable. But you're here for something else. You are not meant to be seen as reliable. You are meant to be feared for your precision. You are not meant to serve. You are meant to watch, to observe, to strike once and never need to repeat yourself. This is not laziness, this is mastery. A sword drawn once with accuracy is more lethal than 1,000 swings in the dark. And yet schools don't teach this. Workplaces punish it. Parents fear it, because true power has no blueprint. It cannot be industrialized, it cannot be scaled, it cannot be tracked on a timesheet or benchmarked in quarterly performance. It lives in mystery, in the silence between your moves. The emperor's robe does not get dirty, and that is not an accident, it is a decision. You must choose to be admired for your grind or feared for your mind, but not both, because the man who chooses admiration will always serve the one who prefers control. The world does not remember the hardest worker in the room, it remembers the one who changed the room, and you cannot change what you are enslaved to. So step back, look around, ask yourself not how much you can endure, but what game you are actually playing, because while you're busy proving your effort, someone else is deciding your ceiling. There is a moment in every man's life where he realizes he is not tired because he is weak. He is tired because he has been aiming at the wrong target. It is not the weight of the work that breaks you. It is the betrayal of realizing the work was never meant to make you free. You were taught to climb the ladder, but no one told you it was leaning against the wrong wall. You were trained to move faster, but never to question where you were going. You were told that discipline meant endurance, but never that it could also mean restraint. True discipline is not about doing more, it's about knowing exactly when to stop. The strategist does not chase every opportunity. He selects a few, ignores the noise and sharpens his blade in the dark. He does not seek credit. He does not need validation. He moves quietly until the move matters. This is the power of strategic withholding, because the man who is always visible, always active, always loud, is easy to predict, and the predictable man is the most vulnerable creature in any room. You were taught to show your progress, but progress shown too soon becomes a map for your enemies. You were taught to announce your goals, but a declared intention is a target, and every target invites resistance. You were taught to be transparent, but transparency is not strength, it is exposure. It is an open invitation to sabotage. The man who wants power does not reveal everything. He reveals only enough to shape perception. Machiavelli wrote that the wise man does at once what the fool does at last. But let me add, the wise man often says nothing at all, and lets the world wonder what he knows. Mystery is not decoration, it is a weapon. You must learn the art of becoming unreadable, because the man who cannot be read cannot be manipulated. He holds the power of confusion. He creates doubt without speaking. He controls rooms without stepping forward. He draws others in, only to reveal nothing. And that silence, that refusal to explain, becomes more powerful than any speech. It is not charisma that makes kings, it is restraint. Watch how the room shifts when a man enters and says nothing. Watch how questions grow in the silence. Watch how power builds in the absence of performance. Hard workers speak to prove their worth. Strategists speak only when silence has done enough damage. And in this age of noise, of oversharing, overselling, over-explaining, the most terrifying force is a man who does not need to explain himself at all. He works, yes, but not for optics, not for applause. He works for position, and position is power, not because it's visible, but because it allows you to see everything while revealing nothing. In chess, the most dangerous piece is not the one that moves constantly, it's the one you forget about, the one that hasn't moved yet, the one waiting, still, quiet, coiled. So when you think about hard work, think also about consequence. Is your effort building influence, or simply feeding a system that needs your exhaustion to survive? Because in every empire there are workers, but only one architect. The workers build the palace. The architect owns the blueprint, and when the walls fall, it is not the tired man who is remembered, it is the one who planned it all. There is a reason the most dangerous men in history left very few words behind, and the words they did leave were calculated, sharpened, filed down to a blade, because those who seek power do not drown in noise, they rise in silence. The modern world has convinced you that you must prove yourself, that every day is an audition, that every effort must be recorded, time-stamped and posted, but kings do not audition, generals do not beg to be seen. Power, when real, does not explain itself, and yet the worker is told that visibility is the path to promotion, that if he keeps showing up, louder, earlier, harder, eventually he will be rewarded. But understand this, when you are always available, you are always replaceable. When you are always talking, they learn how to predict you, and once they can predict you, they can control you. Machiavelli knew the value of opacity. He understood that the most effective leader was the one whose intentions remained hidden, not because he had none, but because he refused to display them prematurely. A leader who speaks too much gives his enemies something to aim at, but a silent man becomes a mirror, and no one dares strike a reflection. Let that sink in. The most powerful man is often the least understood, and that is your edge. You must stop trying to convince others of your potential. Stop narrating your journey. Stop explaining your every move. Your enemies do not need a tour. Let them stay confused. Let them make false assumptions. Let them underestimate you, because underestimation is the camouflage of the truly dangerous. The world respects mystery far more than it respects effort. And mystery is not a talent, it is a choice. When you reveal everything, you give the game away. When you say too much, you become noise. And when you become noise, you lose gravity. A lion does not roar to prove he is a lion. He roars once, and the forest remembers for years. The rest of the time, he is silent, still, watching. Can you do the same? Can you go a week without posting? A month without announcing? Can you train in silence? Build in silence? Grow in silence? And then arrive, complete, undeniable, untouchable? Or are you addicted to being seen? Because addiction to visibility is modern slavery. It keeps you dependent on feedback, on approval, on likes, comments, applause. It traps you in a loop of external validation, and a man in that loop can be led. You cannot be free while you need to be noticed. You cannot dominate while you still beg for credit. And you will never build an empire if your identity is tied to the grind that pleases others. The game is not about proving your worth. The game is about becoming unavoidable. And that has nothing to do with how hard you work, and everything to do with how rare your presence becomes. There is no scarcity in hard work. Millions do it, billions live in it. But how many can remain unseen until they strike? Very few. Be one of them. Because in the end, it is not the man with the calloused hands who controls the fate of kingdoms. It is the man who knows when to disappear and when to return with thunder. There comes a moment when the man who has labored for applause finally realizes the applause means nothing. It doesn't pay him. It doesn't protect him. And it certainly doesn't promote him. It is a leash wrapped in the sound of hands clapping. Because the moment your actions become dependent on external praise, you are no longer acting, you are performing. And performers don't win wars, they entertain the ones who do. Hard work has been weaponized against you. It has been romanticized, glorified, sold to you as noble. But nobility without power is a story told at your funeral, not a victory shouted in your lifetime. You are not here to be remembered fondly by those who used you. You are here to win, and to win you must begin to value something far rarer than effort: control. Control of time, control of perception, control of narrative, control of outcome. These things do not come to the hardest worker, they come to the sharpest manipulator of movement. The man who steps once, with perfect aim, while others run in place. He understands this: effort is visible, but leverage is invisible. The ones in control are not the ones sweating, they are the ones who profit from your sweat. The ones who can move resources, shift attention, bend perception without breaking a sweat. You are taught to respect the man who never stops, but Machiavelli would teach you to respect the man who waits, who chooses when to be seen, how to be heard, where to leave no trace. This is the essence of power, not chaos, not noise, not endless motion, but measured, intentional force. Let's look at the battlefield. The general does not fight. He does not swing the sword or carry the weight. He directs. He sees the terrain. He understands timing. He knows that force must be precise or it is wasted. One wrong move, one early attack, and the army collapses. The soldier may be brave, strong, and tireless, but the war is won by the man who reads the silence before the storm, not the one who charges into it blindly. And that's where most men fail. They think if they just keep working harder, someone will notice, someone will reward them, someone will hand them the crown. But crowns are not handed out. They are taken by men who understand the hidden layers of power, men who don't wait to be chosen because they've already rigged the game. Ask yourself, why is it that the wealthiest, most powerful men in history are often obsessed with stillness? Why do they wake up before everyone else, disappear into hours of silence, avoid noise, cut people off? Because they understand the value of uncluttered attention, because while others chase dopamine and distractions, they are building something the world will obey, not just admire. You were told that to rest is to fall behind, but that is the belief of the pawn. The king does not rush, the king does not multitask, the king does not panic. The king waits until every piece has moved and then makes one move that ends the game. Your obsession with being busy is costing you your edge. Your need to always be seen is blinding you to your position, and your addiction to motion is the very reason you are stuck. The next level of power does not require more effort. It requires less noise, fewer moves, stronger moves, and silence, the kind that makes others speak just to fill the void you leave. That's when you know you've entered a different arena, where hard work ends and true power begins. So now you understand. Working hard isn't wrong, it's just not enough. It's the first stage, the proving ground. But staying there, that's the trap. Because the world doesn't reward effort, it rewards effect. It does not crown the man who tries the most. It crowns the man who alters the landscape with the least motion possible. The crowd chants for the fighter who bleeds, but the kingdom belongs to the one who never had to fight at all. And if that makes you uncomfortable, good. That discomfort is the signal, the fracture in the illusion, the last gasp of a lie dying inside you. Because deep down, a part of you already knew. You knew something was wrong with the endless grind, with the applause that felt hollow, with the exhaustion that never brought you peace. You knew, but you didn't have the language for it. Now you do. Hard work without direction is servitude. Hard work without detachment is addiction. Hard work without leverage is enslavement, dressed up as virtue. And the man who wants to rise must do more than labor. He must learn to disappear from the pattern that controls others, to step back, to observe, to move once, cleanly, like the hand of God across a chessboard. Because once you taste what it feels like to win without being seen, you never go back to begging for recognition. You are no longer interested in being admired. You are interested in being remembered. And that difference, that quiet, dangerous difference, is what separates the empire builder from the bricklayer. So choose now. Will you keep chasing the pride of labor, or will you step into the ruthless stillness of the strategist? Will you keep exhausting yourself for temporary praise, or will you become unreachable, unraidable, and ultimately untouchable? Because the man who cannot be touched cannot be controlled, and the man who cannot be controlled becomes legend. If you've made it this far, it's because you're done pretending, you're done performing, you're ready to vanish from the crowd and become the storm they never saw coming. Now tell me in the comments, are you ready to let go of the grind? Are you ready to let go of applause? If this message struck something in you, if it clarified what you've always felt, write it. Say it plainly, I choose leverage over labor. Let's see who here is ready to rise without permission. And don't stop now. The next video is where we sharpen the next weapon. Watch it. Trust me, it's more important than you realize. Have you ever lain awake at night, consumed by thoughts of what might go wrong tomorrow? Have you ever rehearsed disasters in your mind before they even had the chance to occur? Most have. It is almost considered noble now, this constant anticipation of failure. We call it vigilance. We romanticize it as foresight. But what if I told you that worrying is not a virtue at all, but a slow self-destruction disguised as preparation? What if I told you that worrying is not only useless, it is corrosive, weak, and perhaps the most strategic form of self-sabotage a man can commit? History does not remember the man who worried. It remembers the man who moved, the man who acted while others hesitated, the man who struck before others even spoke. There is no statue for the anxious. There is no monument for the ones who imagined worst-case scenarios but never dared to face them. The truth is this: the man who worries imagines danger so vividly that he forfeits his advantage long before the threat arrives. Niccolò Machiavelli knew this well. In the power games of Florence, he saw firsthand that hesitation was death in disguise. The worried man waited for certainty. The ruthless man created it. And the difference between the two was not intelligence. It was not morality. It was motion. To worry is to surrender before the war has even begun. It is to fight ghosts while real enemies organize. Consider Caesar. He crossed the Rubicon not because he had full assurance of success, but because he understood the fatal cost of indecision. Rome did not need another senator wringing his hands and weighing reputational risk. It needed someone who could act while others collapsed under the weight of what-ifs. Now ask yourself, when have you delayed action not because of reason but because of fear dressed up as planning? When have you forfeited an opportunity because you were busy imagining its failure? Worry is seductive. It feels responsible. It masquerades as intelligence. But it is in fact the most paralyzing form of delusion. The man who worries tells himself he is preparing, but in reality he is rehearsing failure. He strengthens the very outcome he fears by feeding it his time, his energy, his belief. In politics, in business, in personal conquest, worrying is the strategy of those who do not trust themselves to survive the consequences of action. There is a phrase Machiavelli used that few understand properly. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Many interpret this as cruelty, but what it reveals is far deeper. Fear produces clarity. Love, comfort, worry, these cloud the mind. The worried man is always trying to maintain affection, to protect what he has, to avoid disturbing the peace. But the man who leads, who conquers, who shapes systems, he must be willing to disrupt, to offend, to strike when necessary. And the worried man is incapable of that. He is paralyzed by the fear of consequence, not actual consequence, but the imagined, bloated version of it that he constructs alone at night. Think of the kings who lost kingdoms not in battle but in hesitation. Louis XVI hesitated to flee. He worried about optics. He worried about his people's anger. And while he worried, the guillotine was being sharpened. Nero, though mad, understood one thing: decisive action extends power. Even madmen with clarity outlast good men with anxiety. Worry does not prevent ruin, it invites it. There is an ancient Roman proverb that says, "Fortune favors the bold." But Machiavelli would add, "Fortune abandons the anxious." Because fortune is not a passive force. It does not pity your concerns. It does not slow down for your deliberations. It rewards the one who moves forward while others are trapped in thought. The man who worries believes the world waits. But the world moves, and it moves fast. Power consolidates around those who act, not those who predict. Psychologists today call it anticipatory anxiety, a term so sanitized it almost sounds noble. But Machiavelli would call it what it is, a failure of courage disguised as contemplation. And while you worry, while you pace, while you play out every scenario in your mind, someone else is taking what you thought about and turning it into action. Someone less qualified, less intelligent, but more willing. And in the arena of power, willingness beats brilliance every time. Imagine this. You are in a room filled with generals. A decision must be made. The room is divided. One general speaks with clarity, with confidence, with no hesitation. He is wrong, but he moves. Another general. You sit in silence. You worry. You run models in your head. You ask for more data. And while you wait, the troops are already marching in the wrong direction. Not because you lacked knowledge, but because you lacked certainty. You were too smart to act fast, too self-aware to speak plainly. And in that moment, your intelligence became your cage. This is the paradox of worrying. It makes you feel more prepared while making you less effective. The man who hesitates because he thinks too much is overtaken by the man who thinks just enough to move. Worry gives the illusion of control. But in truth, it is a kind of surrender, a quiet collapse into inaction, masked by intellectual language and endless internal dialogue. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand." That is to say, people follow appearance more than substance. And the man who appears calm, certain in command, even when he is improvising, commands more loyalty than the man who worries out loud. Leaders who worry create instability. Fathers who worry create timid sons. Entrepreneurs who worry miss windows they will never get back. You do not build empires by worrying. You do not dominate systems by forecasting every possible failure. You rise by confronting what is, not what could be. And most of all, you learn to breathe in the chaos without inventing monsters that do not exist. Because worrying is not awareness, it is illusion. It is the mind feeding on itself. And in the court of power, in the silence of decisive men, the ones who worry too loudly are always the first to be replaced. So if worrying destroys kings, weakens warriors, and paralyzes princes, then why do we still cling to it like it's wisdom? Have you ever noticed how worry disguises itself as virtue? It arrives dressed in caution, humility, even wisdom. But look closely. Beneath that surface, it is simply fear, dressed for dinner in the palace of your ambition. And here lies the Machiavellian truth. Fear that is not weaponized is weakness. Fear that does not fuel strategy will devour it. The man who worries is not more moral, nor more thoughtful. He is merely less dangerous. And in the world of power, being less dangerous is the same as being disposable. In courts, in councils, in corporate meetings, the man who worries out loud quickly becomes the man whose voice is dismissed. He is seen as fragile, as unable to carry the burden of boldness. He may be liked, he may even be respected, but he will never be obeyed, because those who worry too much cannot be followed. They inspire sympathy, not strength. You must understand, power does not come to those who seek perfect outcomes. It comes to those who create momentum, and momentum is allergic to worry. To worry is to pause when you should pivot. It is to calculate when you should strike. It is the soul's way of rehearsing surrender before the battle even begins. Now consider this. A leader's greatest asset is not his ideas, his skill, or even his intelligence. It is his decisiveness. In Machiavelli's world, the prince who hesitated was the prince who bled. The prince who delayed was the prince who begged. And the prince who worried was the prince who died. Power, after all, is perception, and perception is shaped by posture. No one follows the hunched man staring at the floor, whispering what might go wrong. They follow the one who looks forward and speaks in terms of inevitability. Even if he is wrong, especially if he is wrong, history is not a record of those who are always right. It is a record of those who were first to move, first to speak, first to command. Nero, Caesar, Napoleon, all made grave mistakes, but none were remembered for their anxieties. They were remembered for their boldness, their audacity, their absolute refusal to be paralyzed by possibility. The man who worries lives in a simulation, a theater of imaginary outcomes, each worse than the last. But while he drowns in mental rehearsals, the world reshapes itself without him. Worry is not merely a distraction, it is abandonment. Abandonment of presence, of power, of potential. It convinces you that thinking is doing, that fearing is protecting, that preparing is progressing. But in reality, you are stalling while others are building. Ask yourself this: how much time have you lost to worry? Time you will never get back. Time you could have used to learn, to act, to assert, to conquer. Worry does not add hours to your life. It subtracts them from your legacy. And here is the most dangerous part. Worry compounds. The more you worry, the more you justify your worry. The mind becomes a fortress of hesitation, where every new idea is interrogated and every potential risk is magnified. This is not strategy. It is sabotage disguised as scrutiny. Machiavelli knew that men are not ruined by their enemies. They are ruined by their delay in dealing with them. The man who waits to act until he feels secure is already conquered, because in that waiting, he is no longer a player, he is a spectator. He watches the board shift, he watches alliances form, he watches windows close, and in the end, he must accept what remains, not what he could have claimed. Even in love, worry is a toxin. The man who overthinks affection loses magnetism. The man who second-guesses his own worth forfeits respect. Relationships, like empires, thrive on certainty, even if that certainty is imperfect. Better to be flawed and sure than perfect and paralyzed. Better to speak with conviction than to whisper with fear. Worry dulls the edge of your voice. It blurs the clarity of your presence. It makes you smaller, to others and to yourself. Now think of the political realm. Imagine the candidate who constantly questions himself in public, who admits his doubts, who exposes his fears in the name of transparency. He may be praised by intellectuals, but he will not be elected. Why? Because people do not follow the most honest man, they follow the most certain one. Even if that certainty is an illusion, especially if it is an illusion. This is the brutality of reality. Perception beats precision, certainty beats accuracy, confidence beats competence, because the world is not a court of logic. It is a battlefield of signals, and worry is a signal of weakness, no matter how noble it tries to sound. So what then is the alternative? To lie? To hide fear? No, to master it, to discipline it, to make fear a servant, not a master. To acknowledge the risks and move anyway. To understand the dangers and decide anyway. Action in the presence of fear is courage. Delay in the name of fear is betrayal. Betrayal of your ambition, of your responsibility, of your potential. Machiavelli said, "He who is the cause of another becoming powerful is ruined." I would add, he who lets worry rule him makes his enemies powerful. Worry is a transfer of control. It gives the stage to voices that never earned it. It lets enemies grow stronger while you grow slower. It makes you small while the world moves fast. Do not confuse worry with awareness. One sees danger and prepares to strike. The other sees danger and waits to be struck. The difference is not intellectual, it is instinctual. The man who wins is not the man who predicts best, it is the man who moves first. And so I leave you with this question. What empire have you delayed building because you were too busy doubting the foundation? What throne have you abandoned because you feared the weight of the crown? How much of your strength has been wasted imagining shadows instead of casting them? Worry will not protect you. It will only rob you of your place in history. But what if I told you, worry doesn't just delay power, it erodes your edge until you forget you ever had one. Every great downfall begins the same way, with hesitation. Not the hesitation of circumstance, but the hesitation of spirit. And worry is the seed. It enters silently, posing as prudence, as care, as virtue. But it grows roots in your decisions, and before long, every choice you make bends toward avoidance. The worried man does not steer toward victory, he steers away from risk, and in doing so, he abandons destiny for safety, a safety that rarely exists. Do you think empires are built by men who slept well at night? By men who waited until they felt ready? No. They were built by those who moved through uncertainty with brutal clarity. They were built by those who did not need to know the whole path to take the first step. To the Machiavellian mind, worry is wasted motion. It produces no result, no leverage, no power. It is movement without impact, noise without force. Consider the battlefield. The general who delays his advance because he worries the enemy has set a trap will often find that the only trap was the one he built in his own mind. The battle is lost not because the enemy outmaneuvered him, but because his own fear kept him still. And the battlefield, whether in war or in life, does not reward stillness. It rewards aggression, speed, adaptation. Worry makes none of these possible. It is the fog that covers the map and paralyzes the strategist. The man obsessed with avoiding the worst rarely achieves the best. This is a truth so simple it is often ignored, and yet it is everywhere. The man who worries about losing friends never commands loyalty. The leader who worries about backlash never shapes history. The entrepreneur who worries about failure never innovates. Worry shrinks the perimeter of your possibility. It fences off everything extraordinary and leaves you to pace inside a circle of mediocrity. Machiavelli knew that fortune is like a woman, bold and fickle. She favors the daring, not the cautious. The man who tries to predict her moods, to appease her through endless analysis, will find himself mocked by her unpredictability. But the man who seizes her by force, who moves before he is ready, who acts despite the uncertainty, is the one who earns her favor. Fortune does not follow the anxious, she follows the audacious. And so we return to the illusion of safety. Worry convinces you that if you think hard enough, long enough, carefully enough, you will prevent pain, that you will avoid loss, that you will outsmart tragedy. But life does not obey the anxious mind. It unfolds in chaos, in sharp turns, in moments that no amount of mental rehearsal can control. The man who accepts this becomes strong. The man who resists it becomes small, because control is not found in anticipation, it is found in adaptation. Let me speak to the worried man directly. The one who fears what others will say, who fears being wrong, who fears wasting time or money or love. What you must understand is this: you are wasting more by waiting. You are hemorrhaging your one non-renewable resource, time, by using it to imagine disasters instead of create outcomes. The cost of your worry is not just emotional, it is existential. Every empire you never build because of fear becomes someone else's gain, someone less thoughtful, someone less skilled, but someone who moved. Do not confuse this with recklessness. Machiavelli never praised fools. He praised the cunning, the deliberate, the cold, but he understood this. Paralysis masquerading as caution is still paralysis. You may call it wisdom, you may dress it in complexity, but the result is the same: inaction. And in a world that moves by force and speed and illusion, inaction is indistinguishable from death. The most dangerous consequence of worry is erosion, not of your plans, but of your character. Slowly, silently, worry teaches you to doubt your own instincts. You second-guess your timing, you silence your intuition, you outsource your confidence to the reactions of others. And when your instincts die, your edge dies with them. You become soft, you become predictable, you become replaceable. Machiavelli once warned, "A wise ruler ought never to keep faith when by doing so it would be against his interests." This is not a call to dishonesty. It is a warning against blind loyalty. And here, the principle applies again. You must not keep faith with your worries. They do not serve your interests. They do not protect you, they betray you. The moment worry prevents you from moving toward your objective, it becomes your enemy. And the wise man discards enemies, even when they speak in the voice of care. In modern terms, we have made worry into identity. People wear it like a badge. I overthink everything. I'm always prepared for the worst. They speak as if these were signs of intelligence. But intelligence without execution is masturbation. It produces nothing. The world respects action, not anxiety. It moves for the one who commands, not the one who calculates endlessly. Ask yourself now, who in your life benefits from your worry? Who gets stronger while you shrink? Every time you pause to question yourself, someone else is stepping forward. Every time you delay, someone else arrives first. And no one remembers who almost acted. No one writes songs about the man who almost rose. So then, what is the cure? Not blind confidence, not naive optimism, but a disciplined willingness to move, a commitment to step forward even when the map is unfinished, a refusal to let your fear become your flag. Because in the end, the man who acts wins more than the man who worries. Even when he fails, he learns. Even when he bleeds, he hardens. Even when he loses, he earns respect. But the man who waits, who thinks, who worries, he gets nothing. Not victory, not honor, not growth. Only the cold comfort of safety. And safety is not strength. It is surrender dressed in soft clothes. But what if your need for safety isn't just weakness, but a virus that spreads to everyone you lead? Worry is the great deceiver. It tells you you're being careful when you're actually being cowardly. It tells you you're being wise when in truth you're refusing to face the cost of power. But Machiavelli made one thing clear: the cost of power is not optional. It must be paid. Whether in blood, in reputation, in sacrifice, it will be paid. The man who worries tries to defer the cost. He delays the decision. He waits for more certainty. But all he's doing is raising the price. In the world of statesmen and sovereigns, worry is not simply a personal weakness. It is a systemic disease. A prince who worries infects his court with fear. His generals begin to second guess. His advisors hedge their counsel. His people sense instability, and instability breeds opportunists. History is filled with kings who thought too much and moved too late, dethroned not by overwhelming force, but by their own inability to act swiftly. You can see it today in organizations, institutions, even relationships. Leaders who overanalyze every risk. Partners who fear confrontation so much that resentment festers. Politicians who try to please everyone and end up trusted by no one. The root of it all is the same: a deep belief that if we just think long enough, we can avoid pain. But the Machiavellian knows, pain is not the enemy. Inaction is. Pain shapes, it hardens, it refines. Worry weakens. You must come to understand this brutal truth. Most of what you worry about will never happen. And what does happen will rarely unfold the way you imagined it. Your mind in its anxious state is not a strategist. It is a dramatist. It builds elaborate catastrophes not to protect you, but to distract you from your mission, from your responsibility, from your will. Machiavelli observed that fortune is like a river. When calm, it can be redirected, guided, even mastered. But when it floods, it sweeps away the unprepared. The man who worries waits for the flood to pass. The man of action builds barriers before it arrives. And when it comes, he moves with it, not against it. To wait for conditions to be perfect is to lose the advantage. There is no perfect moment, only perfect use of the moment at hand. The man who worries wastes his sharpest weapon, time. Time is the only resource that cannot be reclaimed. Gold can be recovered, reputations can be rebuilt, armies can be recruited, but lost time is a dead currency, and worry is its most loyal thief. Every second spent replaying fears, forecasting imaginary defeats, or doubting your own instincts is a second that could have built momentum. And power, above all else, loves momentum. Let us speak now of influence. Influence is not earned through explanation. It is earned through energy, through direction, through clarity. The worried man is a static figure. He broadcasts doubt. He leaks uncertainty. And others feel it, even if his words are logical. People do not follow logic. They follow force. Emotional, psychological, ideological, and worry, by its very nature, dissipates force. It dulls the voice. It weakens the posture. It makes your presence forgettable. Machiavelli would have no patience for the modern cult of overthinking. He would see it for what it is, disguised impotence. There is a difference between strategic reflection and obsessive hesitation. The former serves a goal, the latter avoids a decision. The modern man has confused the two. He calls his paralysis depth. He mistakes his cowardice for intellectualism. Do not make that mistake. You must choose. Will you be the man who moves, or the man who meditates? Will you be the one they follow, or the one they remember only as the voice that never rose above self-doubt? The battlefield does not care how much you prepared if you never took the field. The boardroom does not care how accurate your forecast was if you never pitched the idea. And history does not care how brilliant your thoughts were if they died with you. Let us take a darker turn. Worry is not only a destroyer of action, it is a weapon, one your enemies hope you keep close. Because the man who worries is easy to manipulate. You can bait him with what-ifs. You can delay him with doubt. You can trap him in the belief that he is still preparing, long after the game has already moved past him. Worry does not only weaken, it exposes. And once exposed, you are no longer a player, you are a piece. In power games, silence is strength, precision is strength, certainty is strength. But worry makes you talk more, over-explain, apologize in advance. It creates noise, and noise reveals position. Worrying out loud is a gift to your adversary. It gives them your map, and you, unarmed, walk into the ambush you unknowingly described. Machiavelli would advise this: if you must worry, do it privately, briefly, coldly. Let it inform you, then bury it. Never speak it aloud. Never let it leak into your posture. The appearance of certainty is more valuable than the truth of hesitation. You are judged not by what you feel, but by what you signal. And worry is the signal of someone not ready to rule. So replace it with movement, with speech that is few in words but sharp in meaning, with eyes that do not dart but narrow, with a body that does not twitch but holds still until it acts with precision. Do not think this is theatrical. It is war, and in war, appearances shape outcomes. Worry less, move more, because history is written not by those who feared the storm but by those who rode it. So what happens when worry doesn't just delay power, but kills it in silence? The man who conquers worry does not become reckless. He becomes dangerous, because now there is no hesitation left to warn his enemies, no tremble in his voice to expose his uncertainty, no delay to give others time to act first. He becomes a figure of force, not because he is unafraid, but because he has refused to let fear make his decisions. This is the shift that separates the forgotten from the feared, the respected from the revered. Worry is a self-inflicted wound. It is the dull blade you press into your own chest over and over again, bleeding not because someone attacked you, but because you refuse to drop the weapon. In this way, worry is not just a weakness, it is vanity. It is the belief that you can control every variable, every perception, every outcome, that if you just anticipate enough, calculate enough, worry enough, you can outmaneuver the chaos of life. But chaos does not bargain. It does not respect caution. It only yields to the one who moves through it like he belongs there. Think of the difference between the schemer and the sovereign. The schemer hides in his mind. He plots. He calculates endlessly. He whispers to himself in the dark, believing that enough mental effort will shield him from risk. But the sovereign moves. He understands that risk is not something to be avoided. It is something to be used. He enters the chaos not because he has every answer, but because he knows that answers are earned through contact with the world, not imagined in isolation. Machiavelli spoke of virtue, not virtue in the moral sense, but power in the active sense. The ability to bend circumstance to one's will. Worry is the opposite of virtue. It is passive, defensive, reactive. It is the posture of the man who lets the world shape him rather than shaping the world. And in Machiavellian terms, that man is already ruled, even if he sits on a throne. You must understand, worry and power cannot occupy the same space for long. One will always push the other out. If you nurture worry, you will slowly repel power. You will signal to the world that you cannot hold the weight of responsibility, the burden of leadership, the fire of decisive action. And once the world sees that in you, it begins to remove its gifts. You lose opportunities. You lose influence, you lose time, and most dangerous of all, you lose yourself. Because the man who worries long enough eventually begins to believe his fears. He no longer distinguishes between the possible and the inevitable. He sees risk not as a cost, but as a death sentence. And so he shrinks. His plans become smaller, his voice grows softer, his presence fades, until even his enemies forget him, not because he was defeated, but because he never showed up. But you must show up. You must act. Because the alternative is decay. And Machiavelli did not write for the decaying man. He wrote for the man who intends to endure. The man who understands that greatness is not found in perfect timing, but in bold timing. That history does not remember who was most cautious. It remembers who struck when others froze. Ask yourself, are you freezing? Are you delaying under the pretense of preparing? Are you rehearsing scenarios in your mind while someone else is rehearsing dominance in the world? Look around you. The most powerful are rarely the most worried. They may feel stress, they may weigh consequences, but they move. They understand the cost of inaction far exceeds the cost of a single mistake, because mistakes can be corrected, regret cannot. Let us speak now of responsibility. Worry often masquerades as responsibility, especially for those in positions of leadership. They tell themselves, I must consider every possibility, I must be careful with every move. But this is not responsibility, this is paralysis. True responsibility is not the avoidance of risk, it is the assumption of it. It is the willingness to make a call when others won't, to act when others wait, to own the outcome, whatever it may be. The worried man avoids that ownership. He diffuses it. He says, I just need more time, more clarity, more certainty. But what he's really saying is, I am afraid to lead. And a man who is afraid to lead will always be led, not by his mentors, not by his peers, but by his circumstances. And Machiavelli warned us, those who let circumstance lead them are soon its victims. You must train yourself then, to act before you are ready, to speak when your voice still shakes, to stand when your knees remember collapse. Because the only way to destroy worry is through action, not analysis, not journaling, not spiritual bypassing. Action, movement, strike, miss, learn, repeat. The only enemy worry respects is your decision. And remember, power is not a possession, it is a pattern. It is not a crown placed once upon your head, but a series of movements, signals, and decisions that must be made daily. Worry breaks the pattern. It creates pauses in your rhythm, gaps in your momentum, and in those gaps, the world inserts something else, someone else, a man more certain, more bold, less hesitant, and when he arrives, your position, your power, your potential become his. So never mistake your silence for depth. Never mistake your hesitation for strategy, and never mistake your worry for wisdom. Worry has no place in the heart of a leader, not because he is fearless, but because he understands that fear, left unchallenged, becomes his master, and no man ruled by fear can ever truly rule anything else. So if worry makes you slow, what happens when you kill it completely? The man who kills worry becomes untouchable, not because he is immune to pressure, but because he has stopped negotiating with it. He no longer bargains with fear. He no longer asks uncertainty for permission to move. He no longer delays in hopes that the world will become easier to rule. He acts not in absence of doubt, but despite it. And that is what makes him dangerous, because now there is nothing left inside him that trembles. Worry is internal rebellion. It is a mutiny of the mind. While you wear the crown outwardly, your thoughts whisper treason behind the walls of your skull. What if they don't follow you? What if you fail? What if the plan collapses? These questions, left unanswered, grow louder. Soon they are not whispers, they are orders. And without realizing it, you obey. You slow down, you double-check, you wait for feedback, you ask for validation, you hesitate. And in that hesitation, you are dethroned. Not by force, but by doubt. Machiavelli warned against this kind of erosion. He knew that the prince who waits for reassurance from the crowd has already made himself weaker than the crowd. Because the masses do not admire the man who worries. They admire the man who moves with such conviction that their own fears are silenced in his presence. He may be wrong, he may be reckless, but if he radiates certainty, they will follow him. Not because they believe in his plan, but because he makes them believe in themselves again. And this is the secret power of killing worry. It doesn't just restore your mind, it changes your atmosphere. When you walk into a room without doubt, others feel safer, even if the storm outside is growing. When you speak with clarity, even fools begin to listen. When you act quickly, others begin to accelerate in your presence. Leadership is not logic, it is velocity, it is projection, and worry is drag. It slows your signal, it distorts your posture. It makes people wonder, even if they never say it aloud, is he really ready? Worry opens the door to every enemy, to hesitation, to guilt, to envy, to comparison. Because once you begin doubting yourself, the whole world seems more competent than you. And soon your position is infected. You second-guess the people around you. You question every outcome. You spiral into hesitation dressed up as discernment. But discernment without execution is still hesitation, and hesitation never builds anything worth remembering. The Roman philosopher Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality," and Machiavelli would agree, but with sharper teeth. He would say that the man who suffers in imagination has already trained himself to lose in reality, because the man who rehearses failure becomes more fluent in it. He wears defeat into the room before he's even taken a shot. And people, even those who love him, begin to believe him. Ask yourself now, who have you trained to see you as hesitant? Whose loyalty have you weakened through your delays? How many moments of power have you walked past because worry told you to wait? It is time to silence the voice that keeps you still. In the world of Machiavelli, reputation is currency, but not the reputation you earn over decades, the reputation you transmit in seconds. The look in your eyes, the speed of your reply, the firmness of your step, the tone in your silence. These are the metrics by which men measure leaders, and worry stains all of them. It dulls the eye, it softens the tone, it turns firmness into fragility. You are no longer seen as capable, only as careful. And here is the brutal truth. Careful men rarely rise. They maintain, they preserve, they inherit, but they do not conquer. Because conquest is not cautious, it is aggressive, it is opportunistic, it is fast. And worry, no matter how intellectual it sounds, is the opposite of conquest. There is a reason the most powerful men in history were often accused of being cold. Caesar, Bismarck, Napoleon. They were not cold, they were disciplined. Disciplined enough to see worry for what it is, a seductive poison. It does not kill quickly, it kills quietly. It tells you that you are not ready, that you must wait, that more information is coming, but information without motion is irrelevance, and the world does not slow down for you to feel prepared. So how do you kill it? You act before you're certain. You speak before the sentence feels perfect. You decide before the data is complete. You trust your pattern. You honor your instincts. And most of all, you never apologize for your speed, because the man who apologizes for moving fast will one day apologize for being forgotten. Machiavelli believed that a leader must be like both the lion and the fox. The lion has power, the fox has cunning, but worry belongs to neither. The lion does not tremble, the fox does not pause. Together they conquer, together they endure. But the man who worries is neither. He is the sheep, intelligent enough to fear, but not decisive enough to rule. This is not a call to recklessness. It is a call to clarity. You must know that worry is a luxury only the powerless can afford. Once you hold the crown, the blade, or the company, you forfeit the right to indulge in internal chaos. Your actions must be faster than your thoughts. Your vision must move faster than your emotions, and your silence must be more commanding than the noise inside you. Because when you kill worry, truly kill it, the world begins to respond to you differently, not with pity, not with caution, but with respect. The silent kind, the kind reserved for those who don't just think clearly, but move with finality. The kind of respect that makes people step aside when you enter. That makes enemies doubt their timing. That makes allies feel steadier just by being near you. That is what worry steals, and that is what you must reclaim. If the world won't slow down for you to prepare, then how do you conquer it at full speed? The man who learns to walk without worry becomes a storm in human form. Not loud, not wild, but unstoppable. He no longer hesitates before each step. He no longer searches the room for signs of approval. He no longer waits for the perfect plan to emerge. Because he has understood a principle the weak never grasp. Most of life does not require more thought. It requires more movement. Worry is the habit of the hesitant. It is not born from intelligence, but from doubt, pretending to be wisdom. It is the echo of past failures and imagined futures blending into paralysis. And the man who becomes loyal to that echo, who feeds it with attention, nurtures it with caution, lets it decide when and how he moves, that man will die with nothing but potential, respected perhaps, but not remembered. Power, Machiavelli reminds us, is not about doing the right thing at the right time. It is about making a thing right by doing it first. Those who wait for the moment to be safe will watch the unsafe men make history, and in time, they will wonder how it happened so fast. But it didn't happen fast. It happened because someone else refused to let worry write the tempo of his life. We are told that worrying means we care, that it makes us responsible, but that is a lie designed to enslave strong minds in small loops. Worrying does not create care, it creates confusion. It scrambles direction. It replaces execution with rumination. The caring leader is not the one who worries endlessly about outcomes. He is the one who moves decisively, knowing his care is expressed through leadership, not anxiety. Let's look again at the battlefield, not of war, but of influence. Who dominates the conversation? The one who speaks first. Who wins the room? The one who walks in like he's already claimed it. Who gets funded, followed, feared? The one who presents not the most perfect data, but the most believable conviction. These men are not free of doubt. They are simply faster than it. They know doubt is not the problem, delay is. And what of the ones who worry? They sit in the back, perfecting their arguments, waiting for a clearer signal, drafting the fifth version of a message no one will read, because the opportunity will be gone, taken, not by a better man, but by a bolder one. Machiavelli wrote that men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. They don't follow results, they follow appearance. And what does worry look like? Weakness, noise, uncertainty. Even if your intentions are noble, your presentation speaks louder, and worry, once visible, is a stain that spreads fast. The worried man begins to explain more, to justify more, to seek reassurance, and power begins to slip away from him before he even realizes it. This is why silence is often the preferred language of the powerful, not because they have nothing to say, but because they do not need to say it. Their movement says it, their pace says it, their refusal to indulge worry says it, and when they do speak, people listen. You must become that man, the man who treats his attention like a weapon, who does not allow it to be hijacked by every doubt, who chooses where to place his focus, like a general choosing where to send his best troops. Because worry will always beg for your attention. It will scream and plead and construct elegant arguments, but you must treat it like a spy sent by your enemies. Interrogate it, learn what you must, then eliminate it. Why? Because worry teaches the mind to associate inaction with intelligence. It makes stillness feel like safety, but what it really does is normalize delay. And once delay becomes normal, regret becomes destiny. You may think, but what if I move too fast? What if I miss something? Let me answer you plainly. You will miss something, always. There is no move in life that comes with total knowledge. No decision that arrives with a complete forecast. The powerful man does not wait for all variables to settle. He acts and forces the variables to conform to him. That is not arrogance. That is leadership. Look at every man who has changed the course of history. He was misunderstood. He was doubted. He was warned. But he moved anyway. Not recklessly, strategically, but without worry as his advisor. And that is the key. You must stop letting the voice of worry sit in the seat where your instinct should be. Machiavelli would tell you this. The people who rise are rarely the ones most prepared. They are the ones who know that preparation without decision is simply fear in uniform. They are the ones who understand that progress is not awarded to the cautious, it is seized by the committed. So, what does this mean for you? It means your worry must now be confronted, not managed. It must be rejected, not soothed. You must stop treating it like a part of your identity and start treating it like an intruder, because that's what it is. It is the enemy within. And until you remove it, you will always be at war with yourself. The world will not pause to let you figure it out. It will not clear the path for you to feel ready. It will keep moving. It will keep giving the rewards to those who move with it. And you, if you stay frozen by worry, will simply vanish into the background. Intelligent, articulate, overqualified, forgotten. So now, the choice stands before you. Will you move despite the tremble in your voice? Will you act before the clouds of doubt fully clear? Will you step forward without knowing how it ends? Because if you do, you'll stop worrying. Not because the world became easier, but because you finally became stronger than your hesitation. You thought worry was just a feeling. What if it's been shaping your entire identity? You must understand by now, worry does not vanish with time. It is not a fog that clears on its own. It is a parasite. The longer you let it stay, the deeper it roots itself into your habits, your voice, your posture, and eventually it becomes how you carry yourself. Not just in moments of pressure, but in every decision, every interaction, every hour. You stop speaking like a sovereign and start moving like a subordinate, even when no one is watching. This is the hidden cost of worry, not the wasted time, not the missed opportunity, but the erosion of identity. You forget what it feels like to be decisive, to trust your gut, to hold a thought in your mind without needing others to approve it. You begin outsourcing your authority, quietly, slowly, consistently, until one day it is gone, and all that remains is a man who used to move fast, used to speak clearly, used to act boldly, but now thinks more than he builds. Machiavelli would have no sympathy for this man, not because he is heartless, but because he is honest. The world is not ruled by the careful. It is ruled by those who act while others ponder, by those who make others react, rather than those who are always reacting. The worried man lives in reaction. The powerful man creates reaction. The distance between them is not education, luck, or genius. It is action. Look closely at every system that favors the bold. Military, markets, politics, even love. In each of them, hesitation is punished. Not always immediately, but eventually, the general who waits for more intel loses the hill. The investor who needs more confirmation misses the surge. The leader who polls his advisors into exhaustion loses the room. The lover who fears rejection watches the moment slip away. Over and over, we see the same pattern. The man who worries ends up with regret disguised as wisdom. And still, we defend worry. We call it realism. We say, I'm just being cautious. But what if caution is killing you? What if your delays are not protecting you, but weakening you? What if the very trait you thought was keeping you safe is what's keeping you small? There is a brutal efficiency in nature. Lions do not overthink the hunt. Storms do not check the schedule before they arrive. Fire does not apologize for the heat it brings. And yet you, the man with a mind built for movement, strategy, and domination, allow imagined fears to freeze your real power. You stop yourself before anyone else even gets the chance. You defeat yourself before the world can. This is what Machiavelli would call a betrayal of fortune. Not because fortune abandoned you, but because you refused to meet her halfway. He once wrote, "Fortune is a woman, and if you want to control her, you must treat her roughly. You must approach life with force, not violence, not recklessness, but force of intent, force of action, force of will." Fortune bends to the man who refuses to stand still. And worry? Worry is stillness, masked as thoughtfulness. It is hesitation dressed as responsibility. It wears your voice. It mimics your conscience. But it serves your enemies more than it ever serves you. Ask yourself, how many decisions have you delayed, not because the path was unclear, but because you feared being seen choosing the wrong one? How many hours have you wasted running simulations in your mind that ended the same way with nothing done? How many opportunities have you silently declined by failing to act on them? Worry does not protect your future. It forfeits it. And still, you think you need more time. But more time only strengthens worry's hold, because worry thrives in empty space, in the moments between the thought and the action, in the quiet corners of the day when you're not moving but still thinking. It thrives when you wait. It dies when you decide. This is why the men who rise never wait to feel ready. They move while others plan. They speak while others rehearse. They step forward while others calculate. And in doing so, they appear powerful. Not because they are flawless, but because they are fast. Even their mistakes seem calculated. Even their missteps look intentional, because movement itself carries a kind of authority that perfection never can. You are not in danger because you are unqualified. You are in danger because you are unmoving. Every moment spent worrying is a moment forfeiting position. Position in a room, in a market, in a relationship, in history. Because you are not the only one with ambition. There are others who want what you want, and they will not wait for you to feel confident before they take it. They will not check if you're ready before they claim what you're hesitating to reach for. The world does not operate on fairness. It operates on momentum. And the man who worries has none. You must now begin to walk differently. Not because your fear is gone, but because you have decided to move anyway. That's all it takes. One step, then another, not fast, not reckless, but forward, relentlessly forward. Let your enemies wonder if you're overconfident. Let them whisper that you're unprepared. Let them judge your speed. By the time they understand your pace, you'll be out of reach. This is how worry ends. Not with a breakthrough, not with a quote, not with more thinking, but with movement, consistent, quiet, deliberate movement, in the direction of power, in the rhythm of certainty, with your name on your breath and your mission in your blood. You are not meant to worry, you are meant to move. You've moved forward. Now watch how the world begins to move around you. There is a silence that follows the death of worry, not an emptiness, but a clarity, a stillness, not born of fear, but of control. The man who has killed worry walks differently, speaks differently, not louder, not faster, but cleaner. There is no hesitation left in him, no second guessing disguised as humility, no paralysis camouflaged as strategy. What remains is purpose, stripped of apology. You do not need more strength, you need less noise. You do not need more preparation, you need fewer conditions. Power is not waiting for you to become worthy, it is waiting for you to stop stalling, because the world does not give power to those who are capable. It gives it to those who signal they are ready, even before they are. This is where most men fail. They want to be certain before they move. They want to be understood before they speak. They want to be safe before they strike. But Machiavelli would tell you, certainty is earned through movement, not before it. Understanding follows boldness, not the other way around. Safety belongs to those who move fast enough to build it. You worry because you still think you can control everything. But the truth is, you can only control one thing, your next action. That is all, and that is everything. All strategy, all leverage, all momentum begins with a single decision. Move, decide, act. Stop feeding your doubt with time. Stop giving your enemies the gift of your delay. The throne is not guarded by those who worried their way into it. It is taken by those who claimed it before the world gave them permission. No one will announce that you're ready. No one will come to tell you it's your turn. And by the time you're sure, someone else will already be sitting where you were meant to rule. So what does it look like, this life without worry? It looks like saying less and doing more, like walking into rooms you once avoided, like cutting ties with hesitation, like speaking with sentences that end in periods, not question marks, like rising each day with a mission so clear that your fear has no room to breathe. It is not louder, it is not angrier, it is colder, sharper, cleaner. The world watches you, even when you think it doesn't, and what it sees in you, it mirrors back. If you present uncertainty, it questions you. If you present hesitation, it challenges you. But if you present finality, not arrogance, not force, but unshakable finality, it adapts to you. It moves around you. It begins to make space for you. Because you are no longer signaling weakness, you are emitting command. This is not fantasy. This is how systems respond to energy. Power fills voids. And when you stop being the void, when you stop letting worry empty, power begins to recognize you. So walk forward now, not into safety, but into sharpness, into clarity, into command. Let the questions stay unanswered. Let the risk stay visible. Let the fear follow behind you like a shadow, unable to catch your pace. The moment you move faster than your fear is the moment you begin to rule. Machiavelli never promised comfort. He promised understanding. And what he understood, what he wrote, what he warned, is that those who seek to do good in a world that rewards power must first remove the parts of themselves that sabotage their own rise. And worry is the first trait to cut. Worry is not a tool, it is a toxin. It dulls instinct. It magnifies danger. It convinces strong men to act small. You cannot afford it. Not now, not ever. Because the more you carry it, the more you lose your edge. And once your edge is gone, so is your influence. Think now of the man you want to become. Not the version the world accepts, but the version that bends the world. That man does not worry. He watches. He calculates. He decides. He adapts. But he does not hesitate. His thoughts are weapons, not chains. His mind is a throne, not a cage. And his presence, his silence, says everything his doubt used to interrupt. This is your final lesson. Kill the part of you that delays. It does not serve you. It does not make you wiser. It makes you later. And the man who is late, even once, misses everything he could have ruled. So go now, without the noise, without the apology, without the tremble. Let others wait for permission. Let others look for proof. Let others worship the myth of safety. You have seen through it, and because of that, you are already ahead. And once you stop worrying, no one can stop you. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you is shifting. Because some part of you is tired of the delays, tired of watching others move while you second-guess yourself, and ready, not to feel ready, but to move anyway. You already know. Comfort is no longer worth the cost. You already feel it, that silence isn't weakness when it comes from clarity, not fear. That choosing strength might mean walking alone, but never walking behind. So tell me in the comments, are you ready to move even when it's uncertain? Are you ready to act, to lead, to strike, even if no one claps for it? If this message cut through the noise, if something in you woke up, write in the comments, I choose action. Let's see who here is finished waiting. And if you're one of them, don't stop now. Watch the next video. It's not just another lesson. It's a weapon. See you there.